Okay, let's call to order the work session agenda session for Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. It's 9 a.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Colianis?
Here.
Vice Mayor Eisner?
Here.
Commissioner Kulyas?
Here.
Commissioner DiDonato?
Here.
Commissioner Banther?
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is the presentation, Sunshine Law, Public Records, Ethics, and Gifts from Mr. Salzman.
Mayor, Commissioners, I mentioned this briefly. I'm not going to go too much in detail under the general sunshine law because you all take a 4-hour class on this. Plus, this is an experienced board and you all know those general provisions. I would remind you, generally under sunshine law, you know that you can't talk to each other about anything that's going to reasonably come before you to vote on, nor can anybody act as a conduit, which is always my biggest fear, that someone comes up to you. And if it does happen, the key is disclosure. We talk about that in quasi-judicial, because we can correct anything that would occur. The whole idea, remember, of the sunshine law is that if I'm in the audience, I can watch you, and the key is now watch you make a decision. I can observe your face, your movements, how you're doing in making a decision. So that's what the sunshine law talks about. So that's the important part about it. The other part is, and then a lot of people do or don't do this, is that you can provide information to each other in a general statement. For example, you decide, I'll use that you want to move public works, and one of you gives information about, I want to move public works, and this is the background information, and you send it to the rest of the commissioners or one of the commissioners. There's nothing wrong with that. The violation occurs if the second commissioner makes a comment on that, like, yes, it's a great idea. Now the second commissioner has violated the sunshine, the first hasn't. You're always allowed to present information, so don't worry about that provision. Vice Mayor.
When the second makes that violation, doesn't it commit the first as well?
No.
Okay,
Because the first has done nothing wrong.
I got you.
Now, again, can we correct that? Sure, we correct it by presenting all the information at a public meeting and making sure that everybody has the same information, which is why we also talk about disclosure. Did somebody talk to you, especially on the quasi-judicial? Because the whole idea is that you all have the same information. Now, we mentioned this at the last meeting, you all come with your background and expertise. And so some of you may have information that's relevant or background that's relevant to the particular issue. That's not anything that's a violation or that you have to disclose. You can disclose it. But if I'm an applicant for something and I've talked to you, it's important that the rest of the board knows, at least to the extent, and I believe we did it at the last meeting, to the extent of it affecting your decision-making, which I think everyone disclosed. They had the conversation. No, does it affect anything? No. Okay, we're fine. You're protected on that. If there is a mistake that's made, we do what is called a corrective action, and it's a cure. So the cure is basically we have to redo the whole matter again, not just pro forma. We have to do it presenting the evidence, whatever occurred, so that it's as if the first act never occurred at all. And that's important. I've actually litigated that issue. The courts want to make sure that you are actually doing this anew, as if the first matter didn't happen. If you just do it, just take a vote, then the courts go, no, you've violated the sunshine, you haven't cured it. Normally, I think everybody here knows that you could do all your business, the budget, all the big things, no one says anything, but there are certain things that are personal or that create a lot of people showing up. Those are the ones we're concerned about. Those are the ones where people are trying to maybe do something behind the scenes. And when it's controversial, those are the ones you want to be careful about. The joke is that you guys could pass all these financial things and no one shows up and says anything. But if you're doing something like the last one that we did on, dealing with demolition or things like that, people take it personal, they come in and they're all concerned. Those are the ones I'm always worried about. But generally, you all are experienced, like I said, so there should be no issues. Mayor.
So when applicants approach us on projects, is there, like, the extent of the information they provide us? Like, you might have somebody that just stops you and says, hey, I'm coming up before the board, I hope you guys treat me right or whatever, and they just talk in some generic form. But oftentimes, they want to share data with you.
Right.
Now, is that where you should say,
Yes.
time out, I don't need to
Yes.
see this?
And if you happen, look, some things happen where somebody just starts saying things to you, you just need to say, you need to present that before the board.
Okay.
Because that might affect your decision.
Yeah, and also, like I had a situation, I think it's going to be coming up on this agenda, where a person came to see me, went into deep detail. It was not on the agenda. They just wanted to share some experience. And then somehow now it's being put on the agenda. And now I have more information probably than I normally would have gotten otherwise.
And you want to see, so if there's information that would help you make your decision or affect your decision, you want the rest of the board members to know that. They want the same information. Because if that's, taking you down a certain path, then everybody needs to know that. And some of these things are, personal issues, but if the person is telling you about it, this is a hardship for me because of this and this issue, or I'm trying to think of one, my mother-in-law has to move in with me because of this problem, and therefore I need this. You want to just bring that out because that may affect you. And it's normal for somebody to say things that, they don't know. So and if I'm making my argument to any of you, I'm going to use whatever I have. If I'm trying to get something that might be a little controversial, I'm going to say, well, let's just talk about preservation. You know that this area has always looked like this, and you need to continue to do that. Right. And you need to make sure that at the very least, people build things exactly how they were, and whatever information they're presenting, you want to make sure that that is considered. And it's also a fairness issue too, right?
Right.
You want to be fair to everybody so that if I'm opposing what's being asked, I know what argument is being made to you. So it's a fairness issue on both sides. It's the hardest area because people are going to come up to you. You all have been in this community for a long time. You know people. People are going to call you up. You're not going to sit there and not answer the phone with so-and-so that you've known forever, and they may say something that you just need to disclose. So that's it from the Sunshine standpoint. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the gifts and voting. So you're an elected official, and in Florida, unless you have a conflict, which is usually used as a financial conflict for you, business, or family, you have to vote. Okay, when in doubt in Florida, you vote. And the reason is because you've been elected to represent people. And so therefore, your opinion matters. As opposed to you thinking there might be a conflict, they're usually, unless you're doing business or an applicant is some company that you have control of or you're partners in, those kind of things, you need to vote. And if you have a conflict, you have to fill out a form. And that form has to be done within 15 days. Irene will have that form, and it's just kind of a hassle to do that. If you ask me, I would say almost every time I'm going to tell you you have to vote. And if you need me to do that to, satisfy somebody who might make the accusation that you have a conflict at a public meeting, I'm happy to do that. But you need to know that you have to vote. Now, the other one that we've dealt with, and I'm not going to pick on the vice mayor, but it came out dealing with him, is in nepotism.
Pick on him.
And we have to be careful on nepotism. So the nepotism issue is kind of like this. You cannot have a direct connection with that particular person. For example, let's just say one of your relatives, your son, works for the police department, and you're voting on a salary increase for the police department. Nothing wrong with that. It's just too big of a connection, right? But if you directly are supervising that person, let's just say you have a relative who's the head of the building department, then we would have a problem. If they're coming in and asking for something directly, we would have a potential conflict, and we'd want to avoid that. The other thing about nepotism that we would see more of is that appointing a family member to a board, there's nothing wrong generally with doing that unless it deals with land use. Basically, land use is a prohibition for you to make any kind of vote on that. The other thing about being an elected official, which is different than your advisory boards, if you have a conflict, you're still allowed to discuss the item. And the reason behind that, again, goes back to what I said earlier, which is you're an elected official. So you've been elected for this position. Your opinion matters. So you can still you could say, hey, I support this, even though I can't vote on it, I support it and I want you to do that. So you can still have that influence on there. Advisory boards cannot. So an advisory board, if they have a conflict, they can't say anything. They're just excluded from that discussion. So that's kind of the difference in that situation. The other one I want to talk to you about is gifts. So we don't have this come up a lot, but it's kind of been an issue that's out there in certain cities. So if you get a gift, you need to know that you have to disclose that to the city clerk so that we can go ahead and there's quarterly reporting that's necessary for gifts. So we do that again to protect you because we don't want an ethics violation. You all who have seen those ethics violations, they're very long, takes a long time to go through an ethics violation. We just are doing an investigation now on something that was claimed over a year ago. There's only a handful of investigators for the state of Florida. They come in, they do the investigation, take that information, has to go back for someone to review it, determine whether or not there's probable cause. If there is probable cause, then it goes before the commission, and the commission determines whether or not, again, there's probable cause. And if they determine there's probable cause, then if the person doesn't oppose it, then, if the person opposes it, then we have a hearing. This process goes on. You're out of office by the time this happens. And normally, having counsel is on you unless the board approves it in advance. So you have to, it comes out of your pocket. And then if you're exonerated, you can come back before the board and ask for reimbursement. So it's more of a painful situation, and we just want to avoid those. That's what I'm here for. That's what Irene's here for. We can deal with those situations in advance, and so you don't have to deal with that hassle. So that's our idea behind that. Are there any questions on that?
Is there a dollar amount of the gifts?
I'm sorry?
Is there a dollar amount of the
$100,
gifts?
$100, or more than 100, right? It's 100 or more. Yeah.
If I raised it, and it was 25 on way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the 1800s.
Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't here, Smarty.
Commissioner?
I may look like it, but I wasn't.
I'm only kidding.
Well, that was under the Hoover administration.
Oh, my God.
If I could get a laugh, I'm gonna always do it, no matter, even if it's on me.
Regarding the gifts, I know that Mayor started a gift log about recording things as all the items recorded inside the mayor's office. I actually, with your guys' permission, because when I'd gotten into the mayor's office, there were a lot of sister city gifts and gifts missing in general. There's nothing to hide about it. And so when I reached out to Mayor Alahouzis at the time, he claims he has no idea where they went, and they just disappeared. And so I think it's important because these are all valuable items that were sister city gifts that were very ornate for the community, for everyone to enjoy. The fact that they went missing is really disappointing for the community, for staff, for the Sister Cities organization. So I think it's very important now, Mayor Koulianos has this gift log in place. That way we can record everything, we have it for the record, and we don't let some type of situation like that happen again. So I appreciate it,
Well,
everyone going over it.
it's duo, purpose, because the purpose is protecting the city and protecting you
Yes.
from being accused of doing something, and then we have to have that ethics investigation on something you may, you're innocent. I didn't, Mayor.
Actually, I was going to bring this up under, when we get into the rules section, but we could talk about it now. So, okay, so we, like the commissioner said, we created a log, and Irene and Michelle have come in and given numbers to each item that's wherever it is, everything in my office. So they put they have a code, it's in a log, so they know where it is, what it is, and that it belongs to the city, right? Now, what I need some guidance on, because I think it's kind of gray as to what is given to me and what's given to the city. So I don't want to make that call. I don't think it's my call to make. I don't know if we come to an agreement that Irene can make the call, or if she doesn't feel comfortable, we need an avenue to address it, right? Like where, because things, like everything will probably have your name on it.
Right.
Like oh, we're presenting this to the mayor of the city of Tarpon, it says Mayor Kulyas on it, right? Now, it could actually be given to him personally, it could be given to the city. It's hard to see
Yeah, I
that.
mean, we could probably have an independent, group, either Irene or with me, try to make that determination from the
Yeah.
outside. I mean, if it's, for example, if it's an airplane, it might belong to the country, but, you never know.
Yeah, and so what we'll do is, so I think what I'll do is, everything belongs to the city unless I think it was given to me, and if it was given to me, then I'm gonna give it to her. I'll express, I think this was for me, if she needs to consult with you, or I don't even care if she consults, even if we brought it back to the commission at some point, said, hey, this was given to the city, does the commissioners, in 3 out of 5 of us think it belongs to the city? I'm cool with that too. I don't care, whatever the avenue is.
I think it's pretty,
I
yeah.
got my first thing, okay.
I would
My
think that
first thing,
almost
I didn't have my
everything
name on it,
belongs
so
to
it's
the
clearly
city.
belonged to the city.
Right.
And I'm leaving it there, and I'm cool with that. But I think that we just need to have some final arbiter of that, so it's never an issue.
Yeah.
With me, I don't want it to be an issue with me.
But I would say the city clerk, and she's probably giving me the evil eye, but I would say the city clerk should be the person who, at least the first step.
Yeah.
And if she's unsure about it, then we bring it back to the board.
Okay.
The only other one I would talk about is, and this one happens occasionally, is the allegation of misuse of your position. And that is normally what happens is sometimes, just in general, some function that's, you're part of a different group. You want to make sure, if you're sending a letter, maybe in protest or support of something, that you identify yourself not as a commissioner unless the board has given you approval. So you want to have board approval. For example, if you were, let's use fluoride, you're for fluoride, you want to make a statement about fluoride, the board hasn't made a decision about that, so you need to say, as a citizen, I'm sending this information. If the board approves it, then you can act accordingly. As commissioner, I'm against fluoride or I'm for fluoride. You just want to be careful about that, because that's a classic ethics violation, and people do it innocently. You don't even think about it.
Are you talking about like social media comments, or?
Any kind of comments where you're taking a position that could be inferred to be the city's position, even as mayor. You put in mayor, I'm for, as mayor of Tarpon Springs, I'm for fluoride in the
That's blatant.
water, right?
That's blatant, yeah.
And you haven't, and the board hasn't approved it, so you're acting on behalf of the board and/or the city without their approval, and that's a misuse of your position, especially, and I gave you a blanket example, especially if it incurred any kind of advantage to you, right? If by doing this, you get something, quid pro quo, you want to be careful.
And to clarify, that would include that if any of us wrote a correspondence without approval, and you write it on letterhead, city letterhead.
Right.
So, I mean, if it's our opinion, it goes on other paper, not city paper. correct?
Exactly.
All right, because I know that's occurred in the past.
And let's just say you're in front of the county commission on something, and you have
You have to
it's for a
state
different group.
your
You-
opinion and mine,
Right.
yeah.
And you don't want to, you don't want to wear a city shirt or city hat that makes it seem like the city is behind this particular issue. You want to just say, so-and-so, and my opinion is X. If somebody says, well, you're Commissioner of Tarpon Springs, aren't you? Yes, but I'm not speaking on behalf of you just want to make it clear.
Right.
I'm speaking as a citizen or a resident. Vice Mayor?
So, I have always, since I've been down here trying to devote my life to doing things for kids, mentoring and all the other things that I do. So of lately, if I find that there's some youngster who I feel is a growing person of the US of A, I like to send them a letter of commendation and recommendation. That goes on city letterhead and it goes on with my name and title. Is that acceptable?
I think we could do this right now. Does the board have any problem with that? If the board doesn't have a problem with that,
Meaning,
Like you recommend some kid for,
I meet somebody and, I know somebody and I want to give them a commendation so that a lot of these youngsters
Like
do
to go
not
to
have an
school
early resume. So I'm saying that this is a good person. This is a person.
I've done it as well, so, yeah.
Well, if Trish types it,
So-
it's in the public record.
Oh, it is.
Well, I mean, if she types this on her computer, in theory, it's a public record, but I would go the extra step and just CC it to Trish as well in email, so it's in there, but I mean, that's all I would do.
But I'm not writing it. It is Trish who's writing it. My question would be, is that an issue?
it sounds like that you all have done that. It doesn't sound like the board has a problem with
I,
that.
I think as long as the letter is a recommendation by you as an individual
It is.
commissioner and as the board, it should be
And
good.
I think it's a good idea that what Commissioner Riazza said, just give it to Trish and let it be, it's out front.
yeah.
You're
I
covered.
have
the
a
one
framed
writing it,
plaque
so-
from
Yeah.
Frank.
Yeah, but I mean, just
in
to
my
cover-
office
right,
room
yeah.
I know.
When I was an Eagle Scout, so.
I think that's a great idea.
So I think,
You're also an MMA, so I have to listen to you
You
too.
better, yeah, put some respect to my name.
The other question that I had for you also was, we run into sometime, we're invited to dinners and it's over $100. How do we handle that? I mean, I just sit and say no. I don't want to,
if you do want to do it, you just have to notify Irene, because we fill out a quarterly report. And nowadays, honestly, a dinner over $100 isn't that surprising.
right.
So if it's something, I mean, what we try to avoid is, say, tickets to the Lightning, things like that.
Well, that I wouldn't be going to, but that's
Right.
okay, I got you.
Well, you're from the wrong state, but if you were supporting the locals,
An island.
we want to be careful on that. Like, somebody gives you a box seat to the Bucks or something like that, yeah, we probably say no.
Right.
If you're getting, I'm trying to think of an example, if there's a function, let's just say the city did something on behalf of charity for Mike Evans. And he, in turn, gave tickets to the commission. I mean, there might be something where we disclose that and allow you to do that. So we just want to, I hate to use this term, but it's the smell test.
I know.
If it smells bad, then it's probably, we shouldn't be doing it. And if it seems like something, that seems reasonable, then we just disclose it. The disclosure is very protective of you. I mean, it's when people say you're doing something behind the scenes and no one knows about it, right?
so how do you?
Wasn't done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had one more. So there's one more thing. I know earlier you spoke, so I'm going to circle back to the voting. When I was looking at who's running for the volunteer boards, there were people mutually running as well as my wife. So I also thought that I wouldn't be voting on those either. because I could be taken that I am choosing somebody to remove the competition for her. So I didn't.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I.
this is the way I
hadn't
thought
of
it
that
through.
way, yeah.
I only wanted to vote for anyone that is completely not running at the same boards that she would be running for.
I
So
think
as
we'd
to-
be okay with you not voting in that situation.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
I mean, see, the problem is, and why the law looks at it a little differently, is that there's a possibility of two people in the same family sitting on the same board. That's occurred, and a lot of times it occurs in a smaller city because honestly, even here, we don't have a huge number of volunteers for boards. And that's always a problem. And this is a bigger city. The smaller cities, you really have a problem. And so sometimes you just have to fill those boards and you need somebody there.
Well, I just left this MPO on Saturday, and believe me, they left me with a lot of stories from other locations that this particular city is running better than I could have even imagined. It was
Good.
a lot of stories out there that were really scary.
No, this is a very well-run city. You guys do a great job, and, you know, I always like to tell you this. When you look at some of these situations, you go, if that's the worst thing happening, it's nothing, right?
Right.
Because there's some really serious things that are going on in some of these municipalities, and board members have been removed and all those kind of fun things, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, no. So when Mike, let's play on Mike's invitation to go to a game or something. So how does he distinguish whether that's, if his neighbor says, hey, Mike, I got an extra ticket to a game, you want to come with me?
No problem with that.
Okay, it's just, he's asking Mike.
Right.
Right? How do, you know, and like you said, we're in a small town. We know everybody.
Right.
If some guy asks PK to go somewhere, you know, he's most likely his friend, right?
Right.
Now, it could be somebody who's gonna bring something up, but, you know, he doesn't know that.
Right, so my conservative answer to protect you all is always disclose when, you know, just do the disclosure.
Even if it's a random citizen just saying, hey, you wanna go to a game?
So there's no allegation? I mean, again, I'd rather you disclose it and then we deal with it accordingly versus doing it. I mean, even if we disclose it after the fact, so what? I mean, I didn't expect this to be an issue, but they brought this up. Now you know,
Or how
put me in a
about
bad position.
How about you're at a restaurant and you with somebody and they pick the check up and they pay for your
big
meal
one.
and your wife's meal?
That would be a disclosure.
I mean, we do that all the time, right?
Right.
You know,
But only if it's over $100.
Right.
but.
Yeah, don't need it a
but
real
hitting
fancy place.
Yeah, but hitting $100 isn't hard.
Well, you go to Don Taco.
The person you go out to dinner
Stand
with
control
is your wife and another couple, and it's a very casual thing. It's not there's
Well,
nothing
that's
to
my
report.
point.
Right, if it's different, as let's say it's your anniversary and your friends go, we're gonna pick up your dinner for your happy anniversary.
right.
That's, and there's no, it has nothing to do with city, nobody's asking you
That's my-
anything.
that was my
Yeah, no,
point.
then you're okay.
Okay.
The point is, when you
But you said
said,
in doubt,
well, because
disclose.
you said that they start talking about something that they want
Well,
or
not
city.
necessarily.
Oh,
It's
then
like-
no,
But
then,
they could be somebody who's active in town that does
Yeah,
stuff.
then there's
You know,
nothing
it could
wrong with
be,
that.
You know,
here's where the problem occurs, okay? And in foresight or hindsight, and that same person 60 days later comes up before the board
Right.
on some issue, again, somewhat controversial, and you 100% champion their position. Somebody saw you at dinner 2 months earlier.
right,
There's the problem.
okay.
You know, is that rare? 100%. So it's kind of a call on, hey, they took me out for my anniversary. The fact that they're coming, you know, before us has nothing to do with it. But here's the problem. You're having to explain yourself, right? I'm trying to avoid you having to explain yourself.
So would you do the disclosure
I would never
60
eat with
days
those
later?
people. No, I would, yes, I would.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
okay to do it later?
Yeah, because you didn't expect it. It's not something that,
Yeah, okay.
you know, now they're talking
That
about
makes- now-
redevelopment.
Okay,
Oh,
now
by the
makes-
way, before we leave, I'd like to talk to you about redevelopment
Yeah.
of this, and you're like.
Well, they maybe soften you up, not
Right.
even bringing it up.
Right, or Or you take the position of, well, now I'm voting no.
I think if you use common sense, and then as well, I have a policy now, it gets broken all the time because people don't listen. Like I've told the staff at Rusty Bellies, and this is true, no one pays for my meal. I've done that forever. It's not just in city, it's business too. For sure. Because there's no such thing as a free meal.
Right.
Okay? I buy a lot of people's meals, but this is a one-way street. I'm not trying to be fair here. So it happens. I had a client buy my meal 2 weeks ago. Sometimes it just happens, but I think common sense, if it's your anniversary, I think you're gonna be okay. And just have it as a policy, just reach for that bill first. I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I agree with them. That's
people-
exactly what I do.
No, I think that's 100,
Yeah.
that's 100%, the best way of doing it. It protects you. But circumstances happen, right? And so I just want you to be aware of it, and I'd rather do disclosure when there's, kind of, it's on the line than not do disclosure.
Well, Mr. Salt, like, for example, if you go eat somewhere and the restaurant wants to give you a discount, and that discount's less than $25, would you even have to report it?
No. But here's the question.
No, I know.
Why are they giving you? Are they giving you a discount because you're a frequent customer? Is it any different than I would get if I walk in there?
Absolutely,
In the same
yeah, true.
circumstances? Or is it because I'm going before the Board of Adjustment, or I'm going before Planning and Zoning? By the way, Commissioner, hey, I hope to see you at the next meeting, that kind of situation. So if it's something general, like, I don't know, you've been there 10 times and we're gonna pick up your,
Yeah,
it's under $100, nobody cares.
Most of these people don't have motives or are trying to be manipulative. I remember the time that we all went out to Jimmy's Pizza, right? And go over some things about what was going on at the fire station, okay? And then at the end, he's like, hey, come on in, I'll treat y'all for lunch. We declined it.
Right.
But he wasn't doing it to manipulate
No,
us.
no.
He's just a generous guy that just wanted to take care of it. So, we have a lot of generous people in Tarpon that just
Who they are.
who they are. So,
But you
yeah.
also have, it's a small city in certain aspects, and so people observe what you're doing, and it's the appearance of impropriety versus actually impropriety, and unfortunately, what we have is people will come to meetings and say things that start a whole process of something we could have avoided by not having you, do that.
Right.
And it's, the appearance is worse than anything. It's because everybody starts talking about it, and that's what you have to deal with.
Well, the appearance is there regardless of whether you fill the form out. You're just covering yourself by filling the
Right,
form out.
right.
They saw you out there and they're going to think whatever they're going to think.
Right, but then when somebody makes an accusation.
At least you're covered.
Right, we're instantly covered, and they don't get past, it doesn't get past the complaint process.
Right.
It's, I've had people call the state attorney's office on, this person is violating, they committed a criminal act, and state attorney's office might call and you go, no, it was this. Oh, okay, they just close it, right? Because we have an instant defense to it.
I mean, most of the, let's just be honest here. Most of the accusations have been from inside the board, right? And that's just a fact. It is what it is. So, what I do as a policy, and you got to kind of go with how the tides have changed compared to my first terms in this. Like, I don't like to use government computers. I don't have a city credit card. I don't take free meals. I don't take gifts anymore. When I did back in the day, I always filled out the form. Just don't give anybody the ability to say anything.
Right.
That's just the truth. That's how I operate.
I mean, I'll give you a blatant example of the other side that's going on right now. Gulfport had a commissioner who used the city credit card for purchases of alcohol. And even make matters worse, he drank in the city.
Oh, geez.
So everybody saw it. So obviously it became an issue. We told him how to fix it by paying it back and maybe consider resigning. He didn't do that. We had a 2-hour just lambasting at a public meeting. Finally, he resigned in the middle of the meeting. He was going to pay it back. Well, he stopped making payments. So now we're looking at either criminal
How
charges
much
and
liquor
or
do you make
civil
you pay
charges.
for?
$6,000 over a period of like 6 months.
That's just embezzlement at that point, that's
Right.
not.
So now, that's a blatant example of just
Yeah.
not a very wise way of looking at things, but, you just gotta be, I mean, you would expect somebody to be smarter about doing their things, but they were blatant about it. So those are the kinds that you need to avoid. And Mayor, that's it for me.
All right, thank you very much. So let me get started on this, on rules and procedures. So what I'd like to do is keep the general casualness that we already had done in this first agenda item. Let's just have conversation about the rules and procedure. Okay, let me just start off about, as far as the meetings go, my objective is to obviously get the business of the city done and try to be as efficient as possible. I probably wish we would have had one of these meetings before I got started so I can get some feedback. But I have, I'm not trying to, race through the meeting, but I am trying to get through them. You look at this last meeting we had, and we had, 2 items that had some general discussion, right? And we made it, and it went all the way to 11:30. So any ideas that you guys have for us to be able to expedite the meetings, I'm all ears, okay? And again, still getting the business of the city done. I don't want to stifle conversation. I really don't. I think we had plenty of conversation in that last meeting, and it was fine with me. And as a matter of fact, on a personal note, Mr. Salzman, I'm a certified family court mediator. Okay, so I understand that conversation oftentimes leads to a resolution. And the last meeting was a perfect example of that. Commissioner Eisner had one position, Commissioner Kulyas had another position. The board was kind of like stuck there. And then, whatever we found, really a place where I think where we ended was really well. Now, had we not had as much conversation, we probably may not have gotten to that spot. So having conversation when it's leading to some form of resolution, I believe is good, and it's what I personally like that. Because again, we found a compromise that I think worked for that situation. Now, when we beat dead horses on stuff that's going to get voted on 5-0, and we just, have a lot of pontificating, and the meetings drag on, then that's maybe a different story. Okay, so, but I really am all ears to hear from the other commissioners, and so we can kind of come to some idea about, how running these meetings, and so they're not as, so they're more comfortable.
I have some thoughts.
All the way around.
already, Mayor.
Please.
Thank you.
Anybody?
So you all saw my frustration last Tuesday. You've seen it before, and I know I'm, one of the less, verbose people on this board. It takes all types, I suppose, right? Let's start with you. I think, Mayor, you touched on a good point, and I've talked to Charles about this as well, and even Mark back in the day. It's just agenda management. Now, there's sometimes it's going to be unavoidable, and kind of my litmus test is meetings should not go past 10 o'clock. Absent the unforeseen, an emergency, unless we have residents lined up to speak. If they're lined up to speak, we'll sit here all night. They did it for the Walmart issue. We've done it. You guys have sat through meetings, I know, till 2 a.m. before, and that's kind of stuff. Latest I've gone is like 1 a.m. That's fine. If they want to come up and speak, we'll stay all night. But if not, I think we have to look, take the last agenda. If we know we're going to have a demolition permit in the historic area, right? That was easily 2 hours, and it could have gone longer, right? we really shouldn't have a longer discussion item as well, like the Little Anclote Park. That could have been moved to maybe this upcoming meeting, pending we don't have anything like that on there. So sometimes that is out of our control, but when it is in our control, we should really look to only have kind of one premier event per meeting. Because also, I don't believe, none of us are gonna govern as effectively at 11:30 at night as we will at like 9 or 9:30. We're just getting tired, we're getting hungry, and we're getting restless. So I would encourage us to kind of manage the agendas that way. Again, sometimes it's unavoidable, but I think more often than not, we can, manage that better. And then as far as, I like what the mayor said as well, like if our conversation is leading to a resolution, perhaps like the one item we had on Tuesday, that's good, the back and forth is good. But I feel sometimes, and I've been guilty of this as well, I'm in previous boards, we kind of get in our little Fox News circuit where I'm gonna say my piece, we're just gonna go back and forth. We're not gonna be changing our minds at that point. It kind of is what it is, and that was my frustration Tuesday, like, we've said all we can say, the applicant said what they can say, let's just get to a vote. So my thing is this, yes, I think if the conversation is going in the direction of a resolution, that's great, but if we start to get disrespectful to, to each other, get antsy, get tired, that's when I think we need to work to kind of wrap things up. And, I try and, when I speak, choose my words carefully and like, is what I am saying important for my colleagues and or the audience? And if it's not, I'm just wanting to hear myself speak, and that's not productive. That's not what we're here for. So those are my thoughts, and that's how I try and govern myself in comments, and I will hear what y'all have to say.
Mike?
So I agree with what Commissioner Banther just said, and I think that's a learning curve of not having too many things on the agenda. But in addition, one of the things that I thought about was I felt bad for the second readings that were sitting there to the end.
good point.
So I would like to have the second readings placed before that so we can handle it, because it's not even something we're going to discuss. It's something we can just, do the normal vote, and they can choose to leave. I felt bad looking out and seeing that we had two second readings sitting out there, but I agree with how we should move this ahead. Not always can you know if it's going to be a contentious thing. This one was long, it was drawn out, and I agree that we're not going to change our minds on it. And once you see that nobody's going to change their mind, I guess it pays to either defer it to another day, or just not have multiple things on the agenda. That's my statement.
Well, I think every meeting's different. We're not really gonna know how the meeting's gonna go from item to item, depending on what we see. But I know it can get late. I just have a different opinion that, we just need to focus on what's in front of us and get to it. And, there are gonna be times we're gonna go back and forth. And like at that last meeting, I'm happy I've made my points, and I will drive him home 20 times if I have to. Because the point is, when we're gonna set precedents on certain issues, it's important for this board to understand what we're doing that's gonna tie up or free up the hands of future boards. And so there are gonna be some issues that go back and forth, and I do believe, and with the current information that was given, I guess we could say some of our minds were set certain ways. But I do believe that we're, after the mayor looking at everything, and he saw one of the options after we discussed it that made more sense, and
Absolutely.
gave a chance for everyone to review everything. Now, what I will say is, from that last issue, that's not over yet, and that's gonna go on. I'm just giving you all a heads up.
Which one, the demo?
Yes, because we're gonna set precedent in this community, everyone needs to know. And so, I do plan on switching some people's minds from how they were initially thinking. So that is the intent. And so, Mary, you have your style of running the meeting, I get it, but we're gonna have a situation, and just because we go back and forth doesn't mean it was a bad meeting.
No.
You know what I mean? So I don't want you.
I was the first guy to say I was happy.
I don't want you to think that, we're gonna have meetings, they're not all gonna go finish before 10 o'clock. There are gonna be some meetings where they go back and forth, but that's the structure of our commission. Like, the Forbes property is gonna be another issue. I'm not just gonna go with the flow unless I see something that looks good for the overall well-being of this community. And so there are some issues that, like I said, 85, 90% of this stuff we all agree upon, but there's 10% of agenda items that really make up the difference in how our community is gonna head, in the future. And so that's very important to me. And so, I wanna be able to get my points out, just like we're all elected. And, at times we're gonna go back and forth, and it's the nature of the beast, and I know you took the lights away because you wanted to run the meeting, but there are gonna be times where we go back and forth.
We went back and forth, we didn't have
And
lights.
it's fine, and it actually worked out. That's what I was about to get to. So it actually worked out, and so, we could have the management of the agendas. I understand it, and that was a great point that Vice Mayor made about the second readings. And I think we're learning as, we structure some stuff, but there's always that chance of an agenda item being longer than usual, and we just got to be prepared for it. So,
Okay,
thank
well,
you.
how about this as a compromise? If you see an item, any commissioner, when do we have to announce the start of a meeting? Like whether we're starting at 6 or 6:30? Because let's say that Commissioner Kulyas sees an item on there and he goes, I'm going all in on this item and we're gonna be talking, right? Okay, which is cool.
I mean, that's every item. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
No, but if he does, and then we say, okay, maybe that meeting, we need an extra 30-minute head start. Let's move that meeting to 6, because we're gonna be, in that way, it takes 30 minutes off the end. That contentious meeting we had last week, which I don't think was contentious, it was just.
If it had been just, if we had deferred the Little Enclave Park, and I'm not dismissing that, that's a very important issue.
Right.
To this upcoming meeting, everyone could have had their piece, we would have been out there at a decent time. It's not a matter of wanting to go home, it's not a matter, I'm grown and I'm self-employed. But it's a matter of, do you effectively govern at that late hour if it's avoidable? And again, I think that's a great point that the Vice Mayor brought up about moving those second readings up, about about not best utilizing staff and the public's time. I think we can get all this accomplished. We can get the spirited debates accomplished just at a decent hour. So we're all able to engage. We're not, pushing the midnight hour. Sometimes it'll happen, but it should be the exception and not the rule.
I don't think the late meetings are only a problem to us. I think that when we have meetings that go midnight, 1 o'clock,
Yes.
the residents they're not engaged. First of all, they have to go to work. They can't be watching us on TV. They're not seeing it live. We're actually talking in the dark. Even the people that love to come to meetings, you see them all scattering off.
May I say this about that, seeing as how I've been quiet here? That, to me, is more important than even us. And I happen to agree with Commissioner Banther. You don't think the same way at 9 o'clock as you do at 11:30 at night, or 1 or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And I've been here that late. Excuse me. We ask the public to come forth and, excuse me, and state their opinion, and we give them 4 minutes. But for some reason, sometimes we up there think that we can take as damn long as we feel like taking. And I have no problem with that if you're presenting new stuff, a different idea, something I haven't heard 3 or 4 times already. That's where the problem is. And I understand that you're passionate and that you feel certain ways, and I appreciate that. We started this meeting today at 9 o'clock, and our attorney said, for the most part, this is a very experienced board, and it is. All of us we're at least in our second term. So my point is, we're smart enough up here to know what our point is. Let's make our point and then rationalize a decision out of it, instead of taking the attitude that I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to help you come to my opinion. We're all entitled to it, and we don't need to hear it 5 or 6 times. And I I'm not singling anybody out. I'm just saying, say what you gotta say and let's move on. And the reason why I feel that way is what the mayor just said. It's not about me as much or any of us as far as that's concerned. You know, when I first got back on this board, I was amazed at how little was on the agenda. I was astonished. I'm thinking, only 15 items? I mean, we always had 20-something, sometimes 30. And, you know, we all get the agenda and time to research it. I believe at least you're open to, if we have a problem, talk to a department head about whatever's on that agenda. We're not telling them what to do, just help me understand what's going on. Is that not?
Correct.
Okay. So that when we come to the meeting on Tuesday, we're ready. Okay? And we're each entitled to our own opinion, and I just don't think that we need to be constantly trying to change somebody's opinion. I think we need to work towards a resolution like we did the last meeting with the mayor's idea why does it have to go back to HPB? Why couldn't we hear it back? I think that made sense, and we got there. Unfortunately, it took too long. But my concern is with the people sitting there in the audience or on the line ready to call, and even more so the staff that's been here all day long, and they know the issues. I can't imagine what it must be to be you guys out there, the staff people, because you deal with this each and every day during the course of time. You've been working on it sometimes for days, weeks, hours, whatever it is, but you've been working on it for quite some time. And then we drag it out to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and nobody's ever voiced it, but sometimes you guys must go, man, what is this? Why didn't they come to me before the meeting if they had this kind of problem? And I think that's where we need to start. Let's find out before we get there. I know Mike does a lot of research. We all do. We all, through our experience, we do that. But let's rely on that experience, state how we feel, respect each other, like I think we're working towards doing, and I think it's done very well now. It's a disservice to the people that come to the meetings. It's a disservice to the people that work all day long, and we ask them to stay late into the night. Then they got to get up and come to work the next day. All right, we need to adhere to the standard we're asking the public to adhere to. You know, for the most part. And is there an exception to that? Absolutely. There are going to be times, like the other night, I asked to speak more than once. I was just simply working towards a solution. I respect everybody's opinion, and I don't mind anybody disagreeing. I totally don't. What I do mind is that the meeting is being drug out simply to try and change an opinion. If you state your opinion and you don't have at least 2 other people to follow it, then you need to figure out a solution, a resolution of some type, or move on.
Mayor.
That's how I feel. But it's about the public. It's about and it's about staff. It's not as much about us.
Let Commissioner Banther go first.
I think we can accomplish both things, what I've said, what Frank has said, and what PK has said at the same time. So I hear PK saying, you know, he wants to be heard, he wants to make sure that he can have the dialogue he wants, and all that's good and important, we need to have that. But I think we can do it at just a better hour by managing the agenda. And that goes for about 95% of our meetings. So I don't think anything I'm saying or Frank's saying is mutually exclusive from what PK is saying. I think all that can be accomplished together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Commissioner DiDonato brings up a good point. I don't think we should bombard staff with, thinking a certain way, then at the meeting, we ask questions they didn't hear before. So that's different. As far as decisions and, I do think I can change people's minds up here. That's why I sit here and I drive some points home, or that's why we're up here to make decisions. What I don't like, and a lot of the people don't like, when it's big important decisions and you just say yes or no, and you don't articulate your position, that's not good for the community, because people want to see us as commissioners up here articulating our points on why we're getting to a certain yes or no for some reason. And they need to see that. And we as commissioners at times have to understand where people are coming from as well too with that situation. So there are going to be times where we could be repetitive and, but More concerning is when we just say yes or no, and we don't back it up with any articulate thoughts or information from the backup or to move in a direction. That to me is the most concerning thing, because we don't know where anybody's at inside their heads when they're making those decisions. And I don't think that's fair for the residents of Tarpon Springs. So thank you.
Mayor,
Mike,
when you get a chance, can I just give you a
yeah,
legal?
you want to let him go first?
Sure.
Two things, from a legal perspective, there's nothing wrong with, let's just say you have a controversial item or an item that everybody's there for, moving it up.
Right.
You can do that, I mean, so that, what I've seen happen is that if you move up a controversial issue, people get to speak on it, you get it over with, and then the rest of your meeting is easier to do because those people, some of them leave, or for whatever reason, they're done, they got that, and then that's easy. So there's nothing wrong at any meeting, somebody making a motion, or even mayor saying, I'm moving up item 15 because we have a huge group here doing that.
I like that.
The other,
If you see anything,
That's a good idea.
the other thing to consider, Mayor, you and I talked about this briefly. You all do your consent agenda different than anybody I've ever seen, okay? Consent agenda is supposed to be items that really don't need any discussion. There's a couple things about consent agenda. So number one, if I'm in the public, we probably should say public comment on anything that's not on the agenda and the consent agenda, okay? Because the consent agenda is supposed to be, I make a motion to approve consent, you have the clerk read or the mayor reads what they are. Second, we're done, we vote. So, and there should really be no comment from the board on consent agenda, unless you're gonna pull, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna pull the item. And if you're gonna pull the item, it's really about not just saying something about that item, it's about the item, right? So I think that we shouldn't, we have to discuss this because this is an issue, blah, 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 whatever. Because consent agenda should move like this.
Let me, can I, can a commissioner, if a commissioner sees the agenda, because we get it early enough in the draft form, that I'd like to pull that item, I'm gonna wanna pull that item, could he have it moved down to discussion? Can he contact the city manager? Say,
Yes,
"Can
if
you
you're
move it down to
okay with
discussion?"
that.
I'm okay with it.
If the board's okay with that, I mean, yeah.
Then we don't have to even pull things.
But because-
on the spot. You could do it in advance.
Right. The pro forma things on the consent agenda, you're renewing a contract for, I don't know, sod.
Right.
I mean, it's something that you don't need to talk about. Nobody in the audience is really going to talk about it, but they have a chance to talk about it. And if they bring up some issue in public comment, one commissioner may go, yeah, I think we need to remove that from consent agenda and discuss it. But what you're doing from a timing, if you're talking about, is that we make a motion on the consent agenda, we then take public comment on the consent agenda. There should be no public comment on consent. There should be no board comment on the consent agenda. It's supposed to be minutes, things like, just pro forma. So that's just a suggestion that I've seen, and that's different here than any place else.
It has been done that way before.
So what I was going to speak about is I many times do not want to pull the consent agenda, but I'd like some clarification for the residents and the audience that's there. So I don't think it's a problem when I ask a question that I know the answer, but I want the audience to know the answer, especially with what we've been having with who is paying for the fees for the removal of garbage, for the damages. And rather than the people should walk out and feel that the city's going to pay for it, I want them to understand that that's a FEMA item, that's a FEMA item. FEMA will be reimbursing. So in those cases, that's the reason I'll pull it. I know the answer. I want them to know the answer. So that would be the reason I pull it, not for a discussion.
But it shouldn't be on the consent agenda. The consent agenda, Vice Mayor, is supposed to be something pro forma that there's no discussion on.
Okay.
So
then, yeah.
That's just the whole idea of consent agenda, right?
I
That's what I
understand.
never understood here, that you put things on consent and then you talk about them, then it shouldn't be on consent agenda.
And request the city
Well,
manager put it to
yeah.
discussion.
My whole thing is it's not that you're discussing it, it's an informational
Then
comment.
the only other thing I could think of from a legal perspective might be that you have, and I'm not trying to think this through. Commission comments after public comments? I don't know. It's got to be something separate from the consent agenda, or we don't have that on the consent agenda, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
No, I understand, but
Other thing, Vice Mayor, is if you make a comment, there's an inclination that the mayor would have to go to public comment to say something about your comment, and then
I
we keep
understand.
going back and forth, and that's, I think,
I just think I hear what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing. It's just, how do you get that message out
you could say it at the end when you make your comments,
when you say at the end of,
the meeting.
at the end of the meeting, nobody's
I
there?
know, I know.
Yeah, that would be.
That's the only
talk.
problem, but.
I mean, I've always thought that, I threw that with the conversation with the city manager is that little commissioner update thing to do once a month. If maybe we can even do it once a quarter, like if anybody wants to update, like Mike's on Forward Pinellas, and we're all on that stuff, just to make a comment, not to have to wait till the end of the meeting, because like Mike says, nobody's there. Again, wanting to expedite meetings, at least get to the beef of it. I don't know how much more stuff we want to pile up into the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
Anyways, I
Well,
hear what you're saying.
That was one thing. The other thing, I did want to capitalize on what Commissioner Kulyas said with his not just saying yes or no. In any quasi-judicial hearing, you have an obligation, as the attorney speaks at the beginning of each and every quasi-judicial and says that you're obligated to do findings of fact. So it really behooves all of us to be giving the reason of why you're making that decision, not just making that decision. Unless it's a legislative, agenda item, then it doesn't matter. I know there was a recent thing on a planning and zoning that the attorney was asked to give a definition of legislative. That's really not, I've never even heard of something like that. But anyway, usually it's only spoken about for quasi-judicial. And I remember when we had that meeting on the project on 19, that was one of the things that I was a little bit annoyed about, that not everybody did give their findings of fact. So I think if you're just going to vote yes or no, you're not really telling the audience of why you voted yes or no. And I think we all should be obligated to explain the reason, so.
Well, I mean, I like hearing what you know, because then you can keep score, right? If you see that everybody that spoke is in favor of the item, then you know that extra conversation is really not necessary. We've all we all know where we're all going. And I like to hear it, because then it helps me to make my decision. There's stuff, I think Commissioner Banther's thing is like, what's your old saying, something I'll die on the sword for, or something?
Yeah, it's not my hill to die on.
My hill to die on, right?
There's things at the start.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not. Like, I come to the meetings, not to get too argumentative with Commissioner Kulyas, but I mean, there's times where you come to meetings, you either have extreme feelings about something, passionate feelings like about it, or there's sometimes you come and I just want to hear everybody. Like, I don't really know where I stand on the item. I really want to just sit back. I made this comment way back when Jim Archer used to tell me that. Back, he was an old commissioner that really well liked, and at that time I was going to get appointed to the commission. Things happened, but and he was giving me some advice, and he just said, there's times where I just cross my legs and just sit back and listen to everybody, and then see where the conversation goes and see who changes my mind, because not everything is the hill to die on. And then there are obviously some things you have super passionate about, and you want to convince everybody of your position. I mean, one thing that I think we shouldn't do is impugn people's motives. I don't think there's one person on here on this commission that isn't here for the right reason. I think we all obviously love our community, care about our community, want to make good decisions. And again, I'm always looking for a compromise. There's usually a compromise, because I think the reason that we have, the charter didn't put just one guy up here to make all the decisions, he put 5, is so that we have to come to some kind of a consensus, and we're getting feelings from 5 different people, and usually when 5 people make a decision, it's probably gonna be better than just one guy unilaterally doing it. So, anyways,
Yeah, if I might, Mayor, real quick.
yeah.
It's a little bit tangent, but I think it's applicable, and I've thought about this a lot. I mean, obviously, no one on this board's a quiet church mouse. Several of us have done battle with like each other over various things, and I don't have an issue with that really. But I think there is an expectation of the public that we govern efficiently and govern together. Like, I mean, I keep going back, Mike, to the one where you helped me change my mind on the $5 million property on the ballot. My thoughts on the subject didn't change, but when I was aware of what the default risk to the city would be, I wasn't part of those original negotiations. I had some wrong assumptions. That clarified it for me, and then it was a closed issue then, right? So we do learn from each other, but that should be the expectation. I do not believe that they put us up here to fight or anything like that. And even when it gets spirited, I try and learn from everyone on this board. Again, I'm not the most chatty person in the world per se, but I think, again, when you said your point. I think no one here needs a lesson on, am I now just talking to talk? I really like what Frank said about, you get to a certain hour of the night, we're talking in a vacuum, no one's watching us, you know what I mean? So to be mindful of that, but I do think the expectation of the public is for us to govern together and to be respectful. They didn't elect us up here to hoot and holler, but I think the board's moving in the right direction in that regard. I mean, it's definitely made, I think, huge strides.
Moving forward, I was just
No, go
saying,
ahead,
and
go ahead.
I thought we just beat a dead horse just now. I think we're
That's all right.
Good point.
moving forward.
Good
Yeah.
segue.
Yeah, it's a good segue. But getting 2 more items in regard to that. Parliamentary, if anyone feels that the conversation is being redundant, any commissioner can make a motion to call the question. Now, if you make a motion to call the question, then that becomes the priority motion. It gets seconded by somebody, and then we vote on the calling of the question. So, and then if you guys vote to call the question, then it goes straight to roll call. So.
There's no like commissioner comment first,
Yeah,
it's just
so
straight to
I'm
vote.
I know, but I'm just saying, but it's also a part of Robert's rules. So if anybody feels that, now, and then if the remainder of the board, because it's not my decision to go to vote, it's your decision to go to roll call. So if you
I'm
guys.
sorry, Mayor, but that's, as Commissioner Banter said, that's after you've already discussed it to some point anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
If you think conversation's gotten out of control, or we're just beating dead horses, then any commissioner can make a motion to call the question. If it gets seconded, then we have a vote on calling the question. If the commission, the majority of the commission wishes to go straight to roll call, then we go to roll call and we vote.
So is that it, is it straight to roll call, or is it like every other motion where I say call the question?
Yeah.
And then PK seconds it, right? It's not instant to roll call. Could you do commissioner comment then, and have the kind of
No,
redundant?
there's
then?
no comment.
It'd be
There's no
right to
comment.
roll call.
It's the
Okay.
vote, right, because a majority of you have said,
Yeah.
I'm ready
All
to
right.
vote. The
Yeah.
majority has said, I'm ready to vote, and I don't want it, we don't
I've
need
only
to.
seen it happen once,
Well,
I've
you have-
seen it threatened, but only once.
Yeah, I
that
mean,
was successful.
I don't think it's fruitful to be pulling that out
No, it's
over and
last
over.
resort.
I mean, it's not, you're just gonna create hostility and
Yep.
people are gonna feel like they get cut off. But it's there if you really think you wanna use that. Now, obviously, you gotta 3 guys to vote for you
Yep.
to do that. So, but it's there if you wanna use that parliamentary procedure and then another question, Mr. Salzman, is it, like I've been on boards before where we would poll in advance. Like, so let's say that we have an item, and I just think I think it's an innocuous item. I think it was probably gonna just all go down the row. Can I say, if there's no one in opposition of this motion, do you guys mind if we go straight to vote? Like, I know it's kind of like a polling. Like, is anybody here against this? Because if we're all for it, why are we going to have conversation?
Only thing you would have to have is public comment.
Yeah.
You don't have to have conversation. The public has the right to make comments before you vote.
So basically going to a negative polling, right? You're saying?
But basically, I'm sorry, Mayor, but basically, that's something that, like a consent agenda item, that maybe somebody pulled and said, I just want, as the vice mayor said, I want everybody to know that this is paid for by FEMA. Okay. There's really no other comment.
Right.
Anybody in the public want to comment on this? No? Okay. Motion, second. That kind of item.
Like
That
our
would have been on the
emergency
consent agenda.
Our emergency declarations.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was going to bring
Right.
up. The emergency declarations, obviously, okay,
Where there's
nobody needs to
where
talk.
there's, right.
So-
Where there's no longer an emergency, you're voting to
Yeah, and
remove
so
that.
can I just say, as long as, does anybody have any comment on this? If not, let's go to
Right,
roll
and if
call.
people have comment, they're going to comment.
Yeah, then they
You've
comment.
still given them the opportunity on the board
So
to comment.
that's okay. Yeah.
Mayor, I just think if that procedure will take care of itself. You address the agenda item, you ask public comment, motion to approve, it gets seconded, no further comments or discussion, roll call.
Right.
That by itself takes care of, you don't have to ask any of us.
Well, but I can look down the road, because if you
Sure.
have you have an issue, you said, no, I want to talk, then
But
you
Mayor,
talk.
you did that at
right?
the last meeting.
Yeah, I did.
You
I did.
did that. You ran through a lot of items. You were able to do that.
Yeah, but those were the ones I obviously knew there was going to be no conversation on. But there could be some items that are along that line as well. So I may just look down the road. Anybody got anything to say on this? If not, let's just go vote.
There's nothing illegal with that.
I have a question. On our quasi judicial, where there's likely to be an attorney, or maybe even the demo, the other meeting where there was an attorney there, they're usually on the meter. Can we say somewhere on the application or in the process when it goes through staff that, if you're going to have an attorney there, let us know that's something else that should be moved
You
forward?
could, yes, Commissioner, you could do that. And the second thing is, I believe somebody asked me at the last meeting,
That's just a service to our.
we can also limit those,
Yeah.
as long as you're allowing the person to reasonable time to present their position, you can limit what they're doing. I mean, you don't have to give them forever. And thinking in hindsight of that meeting, I think
He went
I
like 10 he went
know
like
you're not
10
done with
pages
this,
too
but
far.
in my personal opinion, the presentation at the beginning took up a lot of time and was unnecessary. That could have been done in 2 sentences.
All right, so how would I handle it? Like, when he got up and he just started reading out of this book, and I understand the point he was trying to make, but I again, talking about beating a dead horse.
Well, if you said, Mayor, for example, you only have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Right.
I mean, that
That
would be
is-
something we would adopt, saying the board could obviously extend that time.
Yeah.
In certain circumstances, but if you only had 20 minutes, maybe he wouldn't have spent 20 minutes talking about sections from the hearing
Yeah.
that you all got within a sentence of saying, I don't think the board got the right point.
Okay, yeah, that's all you had to say.
Right.
Okay. So is that an item, we're not voting on anything today, right?
No.
Okay, so
Can't vote on a,
just,
work session.
It's just conversation. So now, how's this, if we have recommendations to the rules and procedure, and then they're brought back,
We would bring it back as a resolution for you to adopt.
vote at a BOC
Irene
meeting?
is taking notes.
I am all for a time limit on.
Yeah,
almost
how do you
anything.
guys feel about having a time limit on presentation?
Absolutely.
On whose
Absolutely.
presentation, on what?
Like the applicant presentation, like we had with him reading.
I told him not to do that, too, it was stupid.
We used to have 10 minutes.
I mean,
What's standard around the city?
Should we have 10 minutes, and then we can give him an extra minutes if
15,
if
20?
he requests it?
I would say at least 15, and with the understanding that you could extend it. I mean, obviously, if it's something that requires additional discussion, we don't want, the thing about quasi judicial is if I could take a second. So let's just say you make a finding on quasi-judicial against somebody, and they appeal. The law is really just looking at one thing. Was there competent, substantial evidence presented for you to make your decision? Right. The law doesn't care if you vote it up or vote it down. It just cares about whether there's competent, substantial evidence. Our competent, substantial evidence from the city's perspective is a presentation made by staff and any reports. That's why we enter those in evidence. Once that's done, from my perspective, if I have to defend it, I'm done, I'm good. As long as you all don't go really far afield on your comments. So the other person is supposed to have an equal opportunity to present their position. So if you, for example, if you gave the city 15 minutes, and they should get 15 minutes.
Okay, that seems fair.
Yeah, I
So do
agree.
you guys think 15 is adequate?
Absolutely. And most don't, I mean, the majority
No, they won't.
go 5 minutes. Some even, most applicants don't even get up, which I
The
find funny
last meeting,
sometimes, but yeah.
that really went.
I think
it
that
was
was,
too much.
the way
Yeah,
it
I
was
think
too
that was
much.
an oddity of meetings.
It's an outlier.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an outlier.
I don't remember the last time we had things mimeographed and bound and handed out to everybody like
Well,
that. but-
honestly, that was like intimidation to me, but you don't pull out those transcripts unless you're like, here, I'm gonna use this against you. That's why you pull them out. So, I mean,
You're not wrong.
but anyways,
You're not wrong.
as for limiting someone, I would say we can give them the 15 minutes, but we know there are gonna be other issues in which, you know, an applicant and their representation may need to be granted some more additional time
Then
to.
then the
And we'll
commission
decide
could
that
extend.
right then and there.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're
what I
good.
think. We should be able to decide whether they need more time or not, or whether it's just become abusive for us to sit there and listen to something that it's not gonna change our minds in the first place.
My
That's-
brain was shut off by the,
Yeah.
after like the
Okay.
page.
So,
So do you, so are we in consensus to let Irene put a 15-minute?
Yes, sir, I am, yeah.
I think that's cool.
so the quasi-judicial hearing, as I think you just brought up, or whoever brought that up on the screen, there is a place where the mayor has flexibility to call for a motion after the public hearing, you know that? Right after,
Say it again, please.
it says, the mayor has flexibility to call for a motion after the public hearing.
Without,
Well, that was what I was
there has to
gonna
be a
ask
motion,
you.
there has to be a motion on the floor.
Yeah, no, it's, well, a motion and a second, place the item on the table. The mayor has flexibility to call for a motion after the public
Well,
hearing.
that might be what you did, like you called for a motion to table part of it or continue part of it. That's what you did at that meeting. That's different than the motion that's made and seconded. So,
Yeah, when you make a motion and someone so moves it, and then, right? Isn't that what we're talking about?
I don't know, that was why I
no,
was, I had
that's
this.
the example, exactly what happened. So there was a motion and a second to approve, and then subsequently, the discussion that you all had and made the decision that we'll approve, part of this, and then the other part we're gonna continue. The mayor called for a motion to do that. That's the flexibility motion.
So then do we still need to go through the entire quasi-judicial
Yes.
hearing? Okay. That
Because
was,
that's what it says, after the public hearing. The public hearing is, you have to go through those steps, because if we don't do those steps on the quasi-judicial hearing, then somebody can challenge us procedurally, and then we would have to do the whole
And
hearing
staff
over again.
presentation's already been made.
okay.
I have a question. Like with the one last meeting where with the demolition, and he handed out two different,
Right.
can we require them to have it in by Thursday so that we have it up front?
Yeah, I don't really
I
like
mean, how
giving
fair is
stuff
that,
like
that they give us
Well-
that night, and then,
How are we supposed to
So,
digest
so,
this?
okay, so if I'm him and I present that, I'm just putting that into the record in case I'm appealing so that there's documents in the record. You're right. Could it be in earlier? You're supposed to really decide things that occur. We even read it in what I read, the evidence that's submitted at the hearing. So
Well, I
would say-
think you even commented, is that new information?
Right, because they're appealing, in that case was appealing what a different board had already done. You shouldn't be presented new evidence, you're making a decision based on what the board did, you're appealing their action. If it's new evidence, then the point was right. Go back to the Preservation Board and present them that evidence, because they didn't get that to make their decision.
Yeah, you know, okay, so P and Z is advisory.
Right.
Right, so they just say, hey, P and Z recommends this, and they voted this way, and here's where the thought process is, and all that stuff. But HPB, it's an appeal process.
Yes.
They've made a decision, and now there's an appeal process.
Yes, it's different.
And, you know, when I had to do an appeal, when I was a private citizen, you know, 6, 7 years ago, I had to say they did not follow the law.
Right.
Right, they did not apply the criteria for whatever in a proper manner.
Right.
Like, and in this, so I don't, you know, can we hold them to that?
Well,
Because-
that's basically
because
what
when
he
they're
was supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
And as I said, he could have done that, everybody knows, within 2 sentences, that they fixated on this particular issue, which is not the criteria. I mean, he kept saying it to you all and saying, I don't see where that's a rule. Well, I would have argued it a little differently, saying they did not follow their rules. They fixated on this, just like you said, they didn't follow their procedure. Had they followed the procedure, they would have granted it, and here's why.
Right, right. So if in the case of demolition, there was 7 criteria, and, you know, instead of going through the 7 criteria, you know, he wanted to argue some, you know, extraneous
Right.
conversation that took place. So, again, from our standpoint, listening to this, are we advised, maybe, you know, we should advise them, if you're going to appeal, that you need to make your case for why the HPB did not follow the law. If you believe they didn't or didn't apply facts in the proper manner or whatever, them coming up and making these extraneous conversations, I mean, I don't necessarily want to cut them off.
Well, that was a poorly, Mayor, that was a poorly argued case.
Yeah,
What
I
you
mean, it
said
was
is
like-
exactly, when you appeal anything, you have to appeal, why was this decision wrong?
Right.
Right? You didn't base it on the criteria.
But that's up to them, not up to
Yes,
us.
that's their burden.
That's the
They
thing,
have the
yes.
burden.
It is
But if you
them.
go, but this guy is going on and on and on about something like,
In hindsight, we probably should have cut him off.
Yeah.
We didn't really, frankly, I didn't know where he was going. I thought he was going to have some specific comment saying, and the board said this was, you know, I thought he'd do like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I didn't know and again, maybe, I didn't even understand the point, because I didn't get what he was saying. The examples were not something that,
I mean, I cut it, but I think I cut it.
The other thing
a
is,
little
when you
late in the game.
read somebody a novel, which is what was going on, you lose the people that are trying to follow you any which way. In recommendation, he should have had a couple of key points and, at that point, taken questions from the board. 'cause
and
you
then
just-
and just put his client on, who explained everything
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
very succinctly.
And I think that's part, it was actually part of why, if anybody thought that item was clunky, I think it was led to be clunky.
It wasn't anything this board did that made it clunky. It was a presentation that was given to you, and if you all agree to limit those to 15 minutes, it changes the presentation
Yeah, you're right.
of an attorney. They'll make that
Get to the
initial
point.
comment. I'll
Yeah.
put my client on. Is there any questions of the board?
Yeah,
And then you make your limited argument of, they didn't apply the right criteria. Here's, you know, the evidence is in there, competent substantial evidence for you to rule in our favor.
okay.
So we're in bounds by declaring 15 minutes on both sides?
Yes.
And then in the mayor's discretion or the board's discretion, if they want further
Absolutely, if there's,
conversation, you can.
right, I have
I'm
so-and-so here to
comfortable.
testify, are you willing to
comfortable with
listen to
that.
him for 5 minutes? Sure.
But there's also no reason for someone to hand us Gone with the Wind for us to read.
The only
We
reason that
don't
I
have that
could,
much time.
honestly, Vice Mayor, the only reason as a litigator that I would do that is if I had a court reporter there to, intending to appeal your action, and I needed to make a record.
Right, but he had it transcribed by a court reporter.
But I'm talking about to appeal anything you did.
Right.
And that tells me how to come help you all do the meeting from a legal perspective. If I have a court reporter there, then we're going to absolutely make sure every one of these processes is done, you know, to the T, right?
Anytime you see a court reporter, you better be ready for.
Because I know they're going to appeal it if we did anything wrong. So
Right.
we make sure everything is absolutely 100% correct.
Can we put a limitation not only on the presentation, but what is handed to us to be read?
No, because that is, A, you don't have to read it, but B, I have to put it into,
We
I have
didn't
the
have
right
to
to
read
put
it.
it into
The
evidence.
evidence.
Yeah, we didn't have to read it, he read it to us.
Right. Well, that was the mistake again.
It's like a bedtime
As a
story.
litigator, you hit valid points, otherwise I lose you. It's droning on that killed it, right?
Yeah, okay.
So we're agreeing on 15?
Yeah.
All right. So
Anybody else have any other things that,
Well, we jumped around, we didn't follow really any of the,
Mayor, if I may, I wanted to bring up the city clerk and I talked about this, and it's however the board wants to deal with it, but you all receive emails, and your policy is to have these emails read into the record, which I would tell you, you do not have to, should you choose not to. And the only reason why for you to consider that from a legal perspective is, honestly, nowadays, we don't know really who the source of those emails are. They may say they are. If I was giving an email personally on a position, I'd probably contact one of you to say, by the way, I oppose this and I can't be there. I've submitted an email and basically saying X, Y, and Z. But by reading the whole, just from a legal perspective, I mean, you choose to do whatever you want. You do not have to read the emails into the record. We have to put them in the record, but we don't have to read them.
is that's the difference between them submitting a letter versus
Well, even a letter, you don't have to choose to.
then if we don't have to do that, I mean, if that I was going to talk about that example too. I mean, I have to give it to that person. She did her homework, and I thought it was just, I went home that night, the next 2 days, I'm thinking, okay, we didn't put the emails in, but we had to sit there and we had to read every letter into the record. And
Which you do
and
not
that didn't
have
make
to.
sense to me. Okay. Maybe the clerk could just tally, so we read through these, we had 70 that were for it and 3 that weren't, or whatever, just for public
Anything
information.
that the board wants.
I'm in full support of that.
yeah, myself as
Yeah,
well.
to sit there and read 73, I mean, I have to give her credit, but it just was time consuming.
No, again, I would contact you if I had an issue and, you know, and
Okay.
say,
So we don't
Commissioner,
have to
I can't be
acknowledge it.
there, I'm opposing this,
We
I'm
need to
gonna
make that-
provide you a letter. And you might during your time say, well, you know, I got this letter from Mr. Salzman and he said X, Y, and Z. I agree with that, you know, I just wanted to put that in the record, right?
Does that need to be in the rules and procedures?
If you guys want to adopt that policy, then we can put that in there. It's just a consideration
I mean, I think
for you.
we need to, be aware of it, but we don't need to read it into the record every.
Right.
100%.
Can I just clarify, there are 2 kinds of emails that are received. And if you look in the section, and we could change that section, one is that someone could send the BOC an email directly. And if it's on if we do this and if y'all want it in the record, then as long as it's an agenda item, because people send the BOC emails on a daily basis. So when you receive an email, those are not the ones that are read into the record or placed in the record. To have it read in the record, they have to go into the other, we call it the JOT form, but it's another different website that takes you to where it limits it to 2 minutes by 1,500 characters. That's the one that's read into the record. And our concern was basically not that it's not a person, it's not a right address, that's not our concern. As the attorney said, our concern was,
I mean, some of it could be
Someone
defamatory,
could just
some
add
of it could be
anybody's
profanity.
name
If
to
we're reading, if we're
whatever.
generally reading it into record, there's
Right.
concerns.
So So you're saying you still want us to do part of it? Is that what you're saying, or?
No, I'm just saying however you want it, but I'm saying right now there's two types of emails. One that y'all just get that might be on a daily basis that doesn't have anything to do with the meeting.
Any letter or any email?
Yeah, and then sometimes
noted,
people
but not
will
read.
send you
Right.
an email to the BOC site, and then they'll also send it to the site to be read. So it's kind of like double
The general
dipping.
emails, I don't think you have to ever read. I guess, I mean, you can, remember, these are your rules of procedure, so from a legal perspective, you can waive your rules at any time. If you decide we want to do that at this particular time, somebody makes a motion, there's a second, majority of the board says, hey, we want these read in the record. So
I would rather default to no reading and waive the rules, and waive the rules to read. That way it's never like, well, it was a rule you can read, now you want to shut me up.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
whether we can choose to
That's a
read.
better way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best way to go.
Yeah.
Is there an agreement that, Irene,
agree.
you put that in? Irene, you got that? Okay.
So I had a statement on a number of these items. I don't know if anybody else wants to bring this up. There is no consequences for any of the rules being broken in here. On page 5, it says, materials that could be construed as malicious, obscene, threatening, or might constitute harassment or bullying. What happens if it is? There's no ramifications for that. The same thing when addressing the commission. All remarks shall be addressed to the city commission as a body, not to any member. I get very offended no matter who they're addressing, whether it's Commissioner Banther, PK, myself. I don't think anybody should be addressing, they should be addressing the board. Again, there's no consequences.
You talking about public comment?
Yeah, on anything. It says we may request them leaving, but truthfully, we should have a rule that nobody is, defaming or reprimanding or, he did or he didn't take my call or she, whatever it is. I mean, what do you do? We have to make sure, do you tell them to stop? Do you ask them
The
to
gavel
leave?
there, that's what you do.
Yeah, you have the gavel.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see that we don't, there's no sense having rules if you don't follow the consequences of breaking the rules, so.
So let's have a conversation about that, tell me what give me kind of not necessarily picking on any person, on
No,
anything in the
I
public,
wouldn't,
but give me an
but-
idea of what you're talking about, like.
Well,
somebody-
if any, people should be up there addressing the board. So they must come up there saying that this is what they feel. I don't care if they imply a certain commissioner, because you're not explicitly picking on anyone, but I don't think it should be anyone up there addressing any one person by name. I don't care who they look
So
at.
the moment they do that, you are cool with me gaveling and tell them what?
That it's not proper to do that, and if they do it again, they will be asked to be removed. I mean, I don't know, I'll listen to what other people,
Yeah, I think
I mean,
gavel
yeah.
once, do it again, you're done.
I get it. I mean,
Simple.
okay, so somebody came up last meeting and talked about my, my shirt idea, right? Okay, so.
I got some
I mean,
comments on
I
that.
could, should I have gavelled her and said, whoa, you mentioned my name, you gotta go sit down?
Well, that
Like,
that
I-
wasn't
no.
malicious, that was.
I know, I mean, it was just like, so I don't wanna
so
get.
let me
I-
repeat the words I said here.
Yeah.
This is a person making personal, impertinent, slanderous, boisterous, I mean, none of that
She had a
was.
sleeveless blouse on, and looked very comfortable. She's not 260 in a suit in this old building, that's what I wanted to say, but I can't say that.
I mean, the
Of all
funny thing is,
people, I know
of
you
all the
knew that,
stupid
yeah.
things, I have said stupid things, and there ain't no one of us that hadn't said a stupid thing.
Let's keep
But of
this
all the
calm.
stupid things I've said in 3 years, that's the one everybody's jumping on? They're like, really?
I'm wearing my golf shirt, and the June Yawkin wears tuxedo as far as I care. I'm wearing my golf shirt.
Yeah, we gotta laugh at it as well. But what I'm getting at is, I don't want to stifle, so and you guys will have to respect me then, that if I make a call, that okay, if you want me to do it, I'm gonna do it.
Your call.
But you guys gotta back, you
Only-
can't, but you guys can't.
Mayor,
Only
you may-
negative derogatory type things.
Well, but a lot of it's,
Well,
it-
Mayor,
it's-
you made me the parliamentarian, and I'm supposed to say that to you. So you're not, so nobody on the board is the bad guy.
Correct. Okay.
I'm the bad guy.
Well, then you keep,
And-
you watch
And I
it and you
said that,
let
I
it
think,
say-
at the last
No,
meeting.
You would have to say,
Yeah, there were two things I said at the last meeting.
But
One
after
was,
a
the person needs to address the board.
Right.
And the second one was the one where, point of order, and I said, yeah, you're not part of the board, you don't get to make a point of order
Right, right.
argument. So those are, as parliamentarian, that's what I'm, now, what you choose to do when I tell you that is up to you.
Right.
then we kill you.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, and the four of you guys have to agree, if you want me to gavel people who I suspect are going down the road you're talking about, sometimes it's argumentative, right? They don't think they're being malicious, they think they're addressing an issue, okay? But if I gavel them, because I'm pretty easy on the thing, I haven't gavelled anybody that got up and talked. And people say stuff about me, it's like part of the game. You got in this game, we gotta have some thick skin. So, but if I do it, you guys can't come up and, immediately say, well, Mayor, you need to let them talk, that's not right. Well, then
You're the mayor. I mean, that's.
Yeah, you
You
run,
understand what I'm
you
saying?
run the
Might
meeting,
be, but that's
but
just-
what you do is you refer the decision over to the parliamentarian, which
All right,
is.
well, I'll tell you, that'll be the way. I'll say, excuse me for a second, let me ask the parliamentarian, is this a direction that's appropriate?
There you go.
Mayor.
If he says no, then I go. Okay.
What I will say is, that's probably one of the harder things you have to do on the fly, and
It's
recognizing
hard.
Yeah.
how someone's either addressing the board as a whole, or individuals, or turning around, so that's probably the most difficult part.
Yeah.
If you can get that and just like you said, just get that natural lean over to Mr. Salzman, he'll give you direction, and I think
It
we'll
goes
be
back
good.
to what I said about people respecting when they speak.
Correct.
That needs to
Well,
happen.
and the respect, it comes not just verbally, it comes, some gentleman, you all know who we're talking about, that just decides he's gonna meander when it's time for him to talk down some road that he wants to come down, and we're supposed to sit there and just wait for the guy. Okay, I know that Mayor Vaticiotis had an issue with, you either need to be lined up or not. I'm not waiting for you to walk from all the way around the thing. We had.
I agree.
Yeah.
So hold on, hold on,
And
hold
you
on.
called somebody out on that.
So
I'm
two
not playing
things
that.
I would like to see, and I'm curious how the board, one, before public comments, you could say all comments should be addressing the board and not any one individual.
Right.
Two, please be online, prepared, ready to speak, because a lot of cities have you writing your question and your statement on a document.
Or at least your
beforehand.
name.
Does, yeah.
So
Your
there
line
is,
there, yeah.
we do not, and we should not have to wait for so-and-so to come from that side of the auditorium and walk down and through
Right.
here, and we're sitting there like,
Yeah.
I agree. But if I think before the public comments, you should make that known to all the people that are there, just to give them a reminder, that's all.
Invite them up front, where there's
Right.
only seats up front.
I have seen that.
Do we
Yes,
have
that's a
any
good idea.
interest,
Better.
like you said, other boards, and I know the city manager talked about when at Crescent City, everybody, when you.
fill out a
Fill it, yep. And you called them.
And
you
actually,
called-
they were given to the
Clerk called their name,
and the
right.
Clerk would call the people up to speak. Is there any interest in that?
Anything that can, and I don't want to, if somebody wants to speak, I will hear them, but we can determine the manner and order in which it happens.
Put them up front.
I am in support. I've had to speak before Dunedin's, a city commission as a real estate broker, and I'll tell you that we are very generous here. We are very, very generous here.
That's true.
Yeah.
You are generous. You're the only city I know that goes over 3 minutes on a public
It
comment.
used to be 3 minutes. They
3
changed it to
minutes,
4.
and then if it's a group or I'm representing 5, it's normally, now you can always extend it, always. There's nothing wrong with saying if somebody needs additional time on a particular issue. But every place I know does 3. I've never seen, when you guys started with 4, when I got here, I was like, that's interesting, 4. I've never heard 4.
And you could borrow 2 minutes
Right,
from
you
3
can borrow
different
two.
people.
That's
And
crazy.
have a 10-minute
That's
presentation.
what's
You can
crazy.
borrow, but you can't buy too much.
Run for office at that point. That's just crazy.
Can we Is there an interest in just ending that process of getting an extra 2 minutes from someone?
Yes.
I don't know about
I again have never seen that. What it is normally, Mayor, can I have some additional time? Board, is everybody okay with that? Yes. All right, you have additional
It's gotta
2
be
minutes.
fair, though. We do it for one.
Yes, you have to do it for everyone.
You can't
Yes.
give anybody an inch. I can't give Anita an extra minute, but tell, Delacus to like, sit down. You gotta be fair.
We used to, at the end of 3 minutes, we would, the mayor would lean forward and say, your 3 minutes are up, can you sum this up and
Yeah.
tell them to sum it up and
That goes
they're
back
done.
to you again.
Yeah.
I think our current structure is good where, during if you want to limit to 3 minutes and knock a minute off, I have no problem for that. But there are some agenda items where an individual would like to borrow minutes, and if they can borrow one person's minutes for 2 minutes plus the 3 they have, well, it's a 5-minute presentation. I don't want to necessarily wipe away
I'm in agreement to you.
absolutely to that, but
I mean-
our current structure is.
I agree.
A lot of these people aren't coming forward just to take up time on certain agenda items,
We have
I
to-
sort of like our structure, but if we can knock a minute off, that's a
There's
big
nothing
deal.
wrong,
Compromise.
Are you guys
legally,
cool
there's
with the
nothing
minute
wrong
off?
with you also changing it for general public comment, 3
Yes.
minutes. And then on an item,
a
like
good
Commissioner,
point.
you said, this is the demolition, we're giving everybody 5 minutes to
That's a good
speak.
point.
Commissioner, okay with that? Yes. So you can do that on a particular item, there's nothing wrong with that.
But can we agree, right now, the minimum will be general public comments, 3 minutes, and
Yes.
then each agenda item will be
Sure.
three
leave it,
minutes
or
with
leave
the
it.
ability to borrow one person's 2 minutes?
That's excellent.
You could do that.
Fine with
yes.
that? Sounds good to me.
There you go.
That sounds
Why do
good
we
to
need
me.
tomorrow?
Well, if it's, not everybody could do their presentation as quick as everybody else.
Then he has the leeway of giving them extra
No,
time.
no, I like the borrow.
I think we just give, I
Well, the
think
borough
you
does
should have the leeway. to grant the
eliminates
time.
another person.
Yeah, and that's a
Right,
good thing,
so-
because now it cuts somebody else. You don't have an extra person coming up and talking.
We're actually saving a
You're
minute
taking-
by
You're
doing
actually
that.
saving a minute, so.
But the public, cutting the
You can't be
public,
from Zoom, right? You can't be someone from home
So,
on
so
Zoom
the,
giving your minutes.
so
Yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah.
what the commissioner said is 3 minutes on general public
public
comment,
comments.
3 minutes on agenda items, but they can borrow 2.
Yes.
On agenda items, yes.
One person's 2 minutes, and that's it.
Borrow 2.
Total of 5, yeah.
Yeah, only one person.
I agree with that.
I
That's
can
fair.
see
everybody cool
I
with
can
that?
see the protest coming now.
You know, I'll tell you what, I took tally one time.
And he does do
There
that.
was,
'cause
no,
I've
I
sat next
did.
to him.
I sit there and I'm looking at it, I just for the hell of it, because, I'm a math guy. So we had one resident. Now, I like this. I'm really great with this. But I also kind of believe in more counterpunching, like, we don't want to address things that aren't a problem, right? Like we attacking things that aren't necessarily a problem. But one guy spoke for 45 minutes in one meeting.
So got up,
He got up
10,
so many
12
times,
times.
and then took 5 minutes from somebody, 2 minutes
Guy
from
from Palm
somebody.
Harbor?
No. So, and then so now you get 3 or 4 of those people, you are definitely here till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
yes.
So, it's, but thank God we don't have that right now. But I think what we just came up with is a great way of addressing some of that.
Mayor, the other comment that I would make, and I know this board's really good about it, but you cannot engage people who make public comment.
Right.
Other than if you can answer a question that is relevant to your decision-making, because once you engage those people, then we kind of lose control of the meeting.
You're also obligated to answer than everybody.
No, you don't have to ever answer.
You don't want to answer
Right.
that, right?
So the point I'm saying is, a lot of people like to get, better, an old term, get your goat, right? And so I make a comment, and when those people get up, and I've mentioned this before, the best thing I've ever seen is, thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
And it just diffuses the person, because if they're angry and they're trying to get, thank you for your comment. Are you going to answer my question?
Well,
No, we're taking comments.
At the last meeting, the former mayor came up, started asking questions. I told her, hey, you know the rules, we don't do
Right.
that. But then somebody from the city actually came to the podium and answered a question.
Yes, which
I-
we probably shouldn't have done unless you directed the person
Right,
to do it.
right.
or the board, or somebody on the board said, Mayor, can we just have Renee come up and answer this question?
That's
And everybody
fine.
says, okay.
That's fine.
So you can always do, from a legal perspective, you're not affecting anyone if you do that in that circumstances. Because you're just taking those particular facts and circumstances where this is an easy answer that we want everybody to know. That's why we're asking Renee to come back up for this. We don't have to do that in every situation.
Can we also agree, it bothers me frequently when they get up and they actually ask a question, and we say, thank you for your comment. Can we have a policy or an accepted between us that says, when they actually ask us for something, or information-wise, or whatever that be, that we have a designee
So
get back
you're-
to them, so it looks like we're not only listening, but we're actually
In
making
Gulfport,
action.
what happens is the mayor, and I'm not, goes, city manager will get back to you.
That's-
Yeah, we
And
do
we
that,
may
yeah.
say,
That's-
please
Yeah,
give
but
your
we only do
contact
it, we only do
information
it
to
some,
city clerk.
we only do that sometimes.
Say,
Guys,
get a card on the way out.
How about, I think we should move, no, he's not gonna like this, Rudd's cards to the podium. Because sometimes they look like, oh, well, I gotta walk out there to get a card. Maybe put his cards at the podium.
Yeah, there you go.
Or make a spoof email address, whatever you wanna do, I don't care. But like, that way it's something quick and tangible. Okay, right here,
Yeah,
thank you.
grab one of his
There's a
cards.
city manager's card,
That's
yeah.
all
Yeah,
people
no,
want.
that's a nice.
That's all people want.
That's
Just-
a nice tip.
Or make a generic card, just, I don't know, something, email this thing. Yeah.
Just so there's a way to follow up, that's all.
Not like, oh, out, they all look at each other, oh, I gotta walk back there and, you know.
No, I like
it's
it.
silly, but it
Have his
works.
cards right at the podium, say, hey, you know,
Yes,
the
yes,
city
yes.
manager's cards are right
I
there,
like
take
that.
one and call them.
And Mayor, all you have to say is that our policy is not, we're not answering questions. The city manager,
Yes.
contact the city manager, he will get.
Just so they
back
know
to you.
we're responding back, that's all.
Yeah.
I've had so many people ask questions and we thank you for.
Is anybody ever gonna get
Thank you
back
for
to-
the question.
right, right.
We're not gonna answer it, but thank you for it, you know, and
How about signs? What do you guys want to do with signs?
with what?
Signs.
So, you mean in the audience?
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't think
people
we should
bring
be.
signs.
Is that a freedom of speech issue?
What do you think?
It's
I don't
not.
think you have the right to just come up with a poster board that you've cut out from magazines and stuck things on there. I mean, you could prohibit signs
That would be outside the city hall.
So is that up on the pulpit or in the audience?
in the audience if you're gonna do it,
Okay.
Anywhere,
if you wanna do it that way.
anywhere.
Then,
If it's legal, I'm for, limiting it, if it's not a free speech violation.
I am too.
I am as well.
That's,
I am as well.
I mean, I would take it, if somebody challenges us on it, we can go a little further into it, but I don't see that as a policy, because you're trying to have a smooth meeting from a perspective of, you don't want people clapping, you're just trying to get through the business. You have a lot of business.
So you don't want it to turn into a protest?
Right.
are we looking in this at 11 or are we
Guys.
gonna go longer?
There are gonna be some issues, people are gonna have posters and stuff. I get, from time to time, certain posters have some, derogatory or,
They shouldn't be allowed to.
wrong, slanderous things about stuff, but I don't think it's a big enough issue recently unless
It isn't
that
recently.
we should try to,
Well, what about if we said that if you want to, you need to have it submitted to the clerk or something, that you're going to bring something.
Or you could do the opposite, if you could say, you could not say anything other than you cannot produce any hate speech.
I just think it's hard, like, to me, like, if we say, well, it depends, if someone has a sign, David's fat and ugly, partially true, okay? Then we have that uncomfortable thing, well, is that
Partially?
whatever? Or if it's like, save the manatees, something innocent. I'm just for nothing, and they can stand
I am too.
outside, but
I think
I
it's
see
easier.
PK's point, but
easier
it's
to
hard to,
police.
it's hard to govern
It
that.
is hard
What if
because.
Dave is the size of a
Police
manatee?
by just saying
That's a compliment to me in my sport, so thank you.
Follow it further, and we have to change the policy.
Don't feed me any ammunition.
If I brought up the issue that I can't have a sign and you're prohibiting me, you have the ability to make public comment. So
Yeah.
there's an alternative. So time, place, and manner restrictions for First Amendment, you're still giving him another way. I could stand up and say, save the manatee, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody prohibited you from doing
So I
that.
think we all agree there, I think. I've got two other issues that may or may not
Oh,
take
wait a minute,
take time.
did we decide anything on signs?
Well, it's
Oh, we
at
did.
least not
We
a
said
single
no.
PK, but it's at least 4-1, I think, no signs.
it's outvoted, it's fine. We're good.
We can't vote,
okay?
we just
Well,
have to.
but I
But we'll
also
put it
think
on
that,
the-
but I also think there should be a way to, if somebody's making a point and they bring a sign that has some information on it, like a map that they want to point out
Well, that's a different
something.
thing.
Yeah,
That's
so,
part of a
well, no.
presentation.
So I think what we could do is have a general prohibition against general signs, but the sign can be presented to the city
For
clerk.
presentations, yeah.
That's what he was saying, no hate speech.
Well, no, but we're saying no signs at all.
You're saying no signs at all.
No, that's what
we
the
said.
4 votes were.
Other than
no signs at all.
presentations, can you
But I
just
want
say
to
that,
leave,
other than
I want to leave an option for somebody to be able to bring a sign.
Presentations, you could say
Yeah,
that.
other than presentations.
But you're asking for a presentation, so it's something you're introducing, you're okaying a presentation.
So what would be the mechanics of that? If I want to bring a sign, what do I do? I go
If
see,
you've been
do I go see
approved
the
for a
clerk?
presentation,
No, but a citizen that wants to bring a sign. Let's say during Anclote Harbors, that all those discussions, there was, somebody wanted to bring something about traffic, and they wanted to make a point, and
it's not
visually
a
it was
sign, that's
much better.
that's, I'm presenting, if I have like information,
Right.
it's different than a sign that just says, kill all
It's-
elected officials.
I mean, how do we judge what's a sign? I mean,
Wait a minute.
it's a poster board, it's got information on it.
First thing you
So,
do is kill all
what
the
I'm saying
lawyers.
is there should be a way to to have those approved versus, because now we're gonna get into deciding what sign is,
That's the dangerous part, Mayor.
right, right.
That's the
But if it
dangerous
goes through a
part.
process, then,
If we say if you're making a presentation and you have a sign or, that's okay.
but is,
Otherwise,
but a
no.
presentation being made by the public is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, see, I think you're
No, it
running
has to
into
be
a
an individual
dangerous.
or a group, an item.
No, he's saying not people that come up to the pulpit,
Mayor, I'm
but
gonna
they're
have
in the audience.
Mayor,
Audience,
I'm gonna have to
That's
look
not a
at that.
presentation.
Because I think you're running into a potential First Amendment violation by picking and choosing what
Yes.
kind of signs are going to be allowed and which ones aren't.
You remember during Anclote, Carl Wagonfor, was it Carl Wagonfor? Who was the guy that brought the signs up about, and all the traffic stuff and pictures of the cars
think it was
coming over
Carl,
the?
yeah.
I think it was Carl, okay? He was not
That
an
would be-
applicant or something.
That wouldn't
He-
be a presentation.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, I
Not a
mean,
presentation.
it's either all or nothing.
It can't be about the content.
Right.
It's either a sign or no sign.
Right, it's, like, you could regulate how big a sign is, you could regulate those things, but not, as
We'll do-
Charles said, not the content.
We'll do no sign, and obviously if there's some big issues and people want to represent, in a safe and
We can
respectful, we
waive
can
our
waive it.
rules.
We can
That's
waive the rule
perfect.
for that. Okay. All right, Irene, you got that one?
First Amendment, we're very careful about. That one, I will do some additional
No, and
research.
I want people to be able to express themselves.
I've got
I mean,
I've
it's
got
not a,
two more things. I don't know what anybody else said. I have two more things.
go ahead, sorry.
Okay. The first one, I asked the attorney about it, but it's charter review. For whatever reason, it was changed. It used to be, they met, they suggested, they brought forth, and we agreed, or we disagreed, or we changed, and it went to the public. And it was, we were the final people to approve or not. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, and there's going to be people not real happy with me, but we're the elected officials here, and we are the ones that should be making the final decision on that. I guess what I'm saying is 26 items?
24.
24, close. It was just too much. I don't know about any of the rest of you, but I had many people come to me, and I've never had that many ever, and I've served on 3 different charter review committees. We don't have any control anymore. It's out of our hands, and it used to be in our hands, and I think as elected officials, that's where it should be.
I agree 100%.
I agree 100%.
So if we need to make that change then in the policy procedures, if y'all agree. If you don't agree, say so, but
100% agree. It confused the hell out of people. I mean, you can just tell
Oh,
by,
it was
by
very
the,
confusing.
by the results.
well, there was, in many of them, there was like one word different. My own wife, who's read a whole bunch of those,
Yeah.
came to me and said, "What is this?"
If we're
And I said, "There's
confused,
probably
they're
one
confused.
word different," and we read it, and that's what it was.
There wasn't that many well, I won't get into that, but that's, yeah.
Well, I could get into it because there was,
There wasn't that many problems, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you know what it was? There was people speaking that they didn't want word salad, yet they put word salad into the meeting. And I stood up there and the first thing I said was, you guys are putting too much stuff in. Most of the people that I speak to in town are not interested in this. They did not have, they would ask, what do you think? And, and of course, honestly, that speech that I made was utilized against me in the election because they left out the context and just left the fact that I was knocking the public, that they were ignorant, and that wasn't what I said.
That
They
would be
just-
a referendum question
Yeah.
that we'd have to put up.
Can we create a channel in which the charter will obviously come up with their questions, but we'll have the attorney decide whether it's
Andy,
a
are you
policy
saying that
driven?
the charter review, it was an advisory
No, the
situation?
language that at some point was adopted that, and because we went through this many times, there is, after you all review it, the Charter Revision Commission shall make its own final report to the Board of Commissioners in
That was a
ordinance
charter
form,
change?
which shall be adopted verbatim by the Board of Commissioners. That's the sentence that was added, that I don't see any other charter that I know of has that.
So it's in the charter.
Where they're
in the
giving up
charter.
control, where
Yeah,
they're giving up.
where you have no control of the final
no
product.
Never mind.
Unless it's
Commissioner
illegal.
Kulyas has a comment.
That would have to be by referendum. There are some other things that you may want to do by referendum that we will make suggestions down the road because there are things that were adopted that have become difficult for administratively for us
Yes,
to
it's gonna
do.
cost us lots of money.
The biggest issue was that there was a lot of, there weren't that many, there was a lot of questions that weren't policy driven. So if there's a channel in which we can, as a board, cut them out or have a stronger ability to advise the charter while they're coming up with these questions, hey, this is, there's policy and then there's, what's the term I can't think of right now?
Procedure.
Procedure,
Well,
yes.
Commissioner, we have a bunch of them that are going to be coming to you still from Charter Commission regarding policies that you should consider. So they have a bunch of those too that they didn't put in the charter. Right? And we have like probably 20.
So you mean 24 wasn't enough? We're looking for 48?
But these are recommended.
Well, we were able to make sure that they didn't go in the
You
charter.
cut it down, 1 second, you cut it down to 24? Thank you.
Are you saying, Andy, that there's no way we can take control back, the final say?
Without referendum.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's something we could consider for the March election, but we
Yeah.
just have to get on it right.
When they gave it up, they gave it up through referendum?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I wasn't sure.
That's the problem with you have a very different charter revision provision than I've seen before.
We're the only ones that have
Ongoing
it.
trend here with us.
Well, maybe we can maybe,
I think we're the only ones that have
city
that.
attorney,
difficult.
city attorney,
I'm sorry,
maybe
Mayor.
you can help us draft up new language and
Yes.
maybe we can get it on the March agenda.
Okay, we will do that. There's a few more, as I said, we would like to present to you
Okay.
for consideration.
Then I have one last thing.
Sure.
This would probably be within ourselves. I don't know that we need to, maybe we do, and I'll yield to the city attorney on this. But social media can be used in very positive ways and it can be used in very negative ways. And to me, it's conduct unbecoming a commissioner or even a city employee, but I won't go that far. Excuse me, to make negative or unfriendly comments on social media. I don't know, I think freedom of speech says we can't control that legislatively. I don't know, but I would hope that as a policy, any of us sitting up here would either say something nice or say nothing at all on social media. And maybe I'm not a big social media person. I rarely, if ever, post anything. I do read it. But I just think that you lead by example, and we need to be setting an example. And again, this doesn't, it's adopted across the board. It doesn't, I'm not singling anyone out here because most of us abide by what I'm saying. I just would like to see us always put our best foot forward. And let's face it, there are a lot of my friends, and I'm sure you have friends as well, that are just dropping social media because of the negativity. And I just wanted to bring it up that we would consider not being negative on social media
Well-
as a city figure.
You do have a provision under your social media policy, 9C. It's very broad, but it says, first off, elected officials must be clear that they are posting as individuals and may not represent their posts as the official views of the city unless specifically directed by an act of the commission or allowed pursuant to law or policy. Elected officials are expected to be courteous when interacting on social media with the public, other officials, and government representatives. Elected officials shall not post materials that could be construed as malicious, obscene, or threatening, or that might constitute harassment or bullying. That is a provision you
That
have.
pretty
in
much says what I'm saying then, so it's there. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I just wanted to bring it up that
I'll take the lead on it. I think social media is my best asset. It reaches out people my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, people who aren't paying attention because no one's really watching the meetings. And social media has gotten, actually, when we post these meetings on social media, has gotten thousands of views, more than just a couple hundred that we used to get from YouTube alone. So, you know, I criticize some of my board members from time to time, but I feel like, and I encourage you all to criticize me from time to time if you think I'm not voting a certain way, or if you want to pin me down towards a certain item in which I support or don't support. I mean, I just think that's the nature of the beast. But now there are malicious, there are, you know, questions to ask. There's different ways to, and what we're deciding, and people's emotions and sensory limits are, all of us vary. We all vary, you know. So what one person might construe as malicious, or what one person might construe as, you know, derogatory, may not be for the next. So, but there obviously are clear and cut fine lines, you know, slander, you know, those are situations in which they can be used to hold someone accountable in a court or something like that. But social media is, you know, the bottom line is, what's the difference if people are spreading stuff social media negatively, or if some of the commissioners are doing it with their mouths in the streets? It's the same thing. It's just, it's another platform.
but the scale, I think, is a great deal different.
Well, yeah,
Plus-
but.
Plus you're eyeball to eyeball, which is a total different thing than social media where you don't even see the people you're.
Well, so I'm the type of person, I like to be upfront and let people know, but there's no difference between doing that or going to a networking event and talking amongst 5, 6 people and they all spread different ways, you know? So I think we gotta have tough skin, and, you know, if we put ourselves in situations for this community, and I think we should all go home being proud of how we voted from item to item, and stick to our guns on it. And, you know, so I don't want to be limited to using social media, because that's my biggest asset. And I use it from time to time when, like I said, there's that 10% of stuff that we need to get out to the public to get an idea for them. And, you know, during political season, if, you know, there are people who step up and, you know, they have their own criticisms as us, and they have their own faults that come in through with city stuff or city meetings, then I may use it against them if I feel like they're not the best candidate for the future well-being of this community. So, you know, I'm proud of that stuff. I don't take it back in any way, for myself at least. And like I said, it's a tool to get people who don't usually follow or paying attention to see what's going on in the community. So I'm not going to support it, but thanks.
So I am going to agree with Commissioner Kulas, what he had to say, but he clearly states that what his comments are city-related. I personally quote a lot of things, and none of it is city-related. If somebody asks me or even makes a comment on my page, city-related, I put my phone number and ask them to give me a call if they'd like to discuss anything. But I am an advocate to keep America the way it is, and federally, I am very political, and I would never stop it. I'm not negative to people. I am more so making people know exactly where I stand, and I want to protect the flag. I want to protect this country, and I will always do that without being disrespectful to someone else. People do get disrespectful because, as everybody knows, there's something called keyboard warriors, and we live in a very polarized world. And if you're on one side of the coin, you're not allowed to make a decision or have a decision, but on the other side, you're allowed to make a decision any way you like. So I am going to be free speech and say what's on my mind. And if it goes astray, I usually block the person because it's my personal page. It's not my city page. I don't have a city page. I will never be stopped from speaking my mind. Like I said, I'm in agreement. I don't speak citywide, but I definitely speak. And anyone that's seen what I write is it has to do with national politics. And if somebody's offended, there's a button there that says BLOCK. They can block me. If they curse me or curse something, I've had people compare the current administration to Hitler, who killed my grandparents. That's immediate blocking, just so anybody knows that. If they want to make that comparison, they get blocked immediately. So, I know you're in a different, group. I didn't grow up with Facebook. I lost most of my friends without communication. It has its good points, it has its bad points. I keep tabs of my grandkids, my kids, and post good things, but I also am a patriot, and my patriotism will never be questioned.
I am not talking about patriotism. And in fact, you do a good job in that you actually have two different Facebook pages. One you keep political and one you keep social. And on your social, you're right. Other than politics, everybody's stating their politics on social. I'm not talking about that. And I think that all of us up here know exactly what I am talking about. And I'm asking just for us to be representative of what we should be up here when we're on social media. That certainly, I'm not talking about what you're talking about. Everybody has the right to be a patriot. Everybody has their own right anyway. I knew bringing this up was not going to be totally acceptable to all concerned. However, I felt the need to say we're looked at in a certain light, and there are boundaries in the way we state things. No, not everything's going to be positive, but it doesn't need to be derogatory in any shape, form, or fashion.
I'll say something.
And if anybody can construe it as derogatory, then that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, David?
There's some good points here said. I don't think anybody here wants to limit speech. You all are grown men. You don't need me telling you what you can and can't post, and I would not support any rule otherwise. Even if, oh yeah, I understand that, yes. But I think, and I think me and Frank are on the same page here. I think what this is going is, I think as elected officials, we're called to be a step above. And what we are allowed to do and what we should do are two different things. In my younger years, I would get in fights in social media. PK and I back in the years have had some spirited debates on there, right? But I've kind of pulled back from that. Part of that might be my age, but I've never seen anything good coming from fighting online. It just doesn't. Things are much better done in person, so I'm not for limiting it, and we're not going to limit it, but I just think we all need to understand what
You talked about.
Yeah, what we can and shouldn't do. And then on the national level, I went to an extreme. When I got elected first in 2013, I switched to just independent. I don't have aspirations beyond Tarpon Springs, so it's irrelevant what my political party is. And, I've been very proud that, while I do personally vote very conservative, I have found major compromises and common grounds with people from all walks of life. And I think that's very important in this position to remember that we're not partisan here. We can have our own personal beliefs, and we can do that on our own time. But people in town are always going to look at us on social media as nonpartisan, city commissioners. So I think we just need to govern ourselves like that, like adults, and guard ourselves about talking online too much. That's just my
Well,
personal opinion.
let me make a comment. So yeah, I definitely don't want to even make any kind of motion to limit any commissioner's comments on outside of City Hall. I think, though, where, you look at in one of the public comments, it says the mayor shall preserve order and decorum and shall prevent attacks on personalities or impugning motives of commission members. I think that we just have to be, and like David said, we're grown adults. Everybody has to manage themselves. We're all independent elected officials. We all have our own, we're all here to represent the town. I just think that if we just refrain from impugning of motives, like if you disagree, if you think that I'm going down the wrong road and you want to post something on social media or something about it, that's fine. I just think whenever we get into impugning of motives, I think is wrong. But that's up to everybody to manage themselves. Let's not, I'm not, I do what I do on social media. Everybody does what they do. Paniotti's much younger than than me, than everybody on this side of on the left side over here. Yeah, so.
38.
I'm moving my chair.
So anyway, no, and I agree. I mean, it's a platform for information. It's a platform for discussion. People take it for what it's worth. Have at it and do what you do. I mean, I have no issues. Again, personally, and you and I have had conversations about, like, yeah, don't jump me in there if you don't know where the heck I'm coming from. So, but that's just human people. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah, I gotta, Mr. Salzman, obviously I use it half the time personal, half the time, as an individual, I get city comments out. Am I allowed to block anybody?
No, that's the reason why I do what I do.
No, sir.
Yeah.
Once you open it up to any city business, any position that you've given or someone gives you, you cannot.
Now, he can't block anybody on social media, or just
correct.
from a personal account?
Oh, no, only anything related to the city.
The
So if
city.
I call up and say, the city sucks, you cannot block me from
Do a
saying that.
city email.
Because you've used it for city purposes.
I see, that makes
If I
sense.
use I have an account, I haven't used it for city comments in 2 years, let's say. Am I allowed to block people on personals?
2
See?
years or ever?
Well, let's just say 2 years. I mean,
Ever.
you see that? Okay, so
So that's why, if you use it for any purposes, the way the case that came out read, it's like you cannot block anyone.
So let me, when we have like, I have a personal one, and then I have
me on
my
Instagram.
mayor.
Right. Your personal one, don't use it for city business.
Okay, so if I post, like I was at an event and I posted it on my personal,
That shouldn't be a problem. If you
But is
take
that city
any
business?
kind of.
It's a stance you
Yeah,
take.
it's a position.
all right, so also like Commissioner Eisner has used your city picture, which I use mine.
I don't think that.
That's my job.
No,
That's all.
but then you're also using that as your personal.
I don't,
email.
I think the way the
As your
case
personal
read, it
page.
was
Should we
because
refrain from even using anything
somebody used it for purposes of taking, as commissioner, I think we should, buy all this land and do parks.
Right.
And I contact you and I say, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. And you go, well, you're an ass and I'm gonna block you. You can't block me. Because you took it for position. Now, if you're saying, by the way, we're having a 4th of July, city, and I'm encouraging everyone to be there, no, I don't think I think you could block me if I come on and say, 4th of July, it's a communist thing or whatever.
Again, I just want to reiterate that I didn't bring this up for a rule change or policy change or any of that. I brought it up so that we can discuss it, number one, because there's been some good points come out, like, I don't know if we all knew, I didn't know that if you make a political statement on Facebook, that you can't block that person if they respond back. I didn't know that until today.
I did.
So, well, that's why you have two different pages. So that, I mean, sometimes you just bring things up for discussion to bring out points, and I learned something today, and I think maybe we all did. But I'm just asking you to consider it, that's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for anything else.
Well, that's what I am definitely.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about?
I mean, we have the changes to bring to you, and as I said, this is a living, breathing document. If you could pass it at your next meeting, and we can make changes at the following meeting.
Well,
We
I
never-
enjoyed this meeting. and-
We never brought up anything about consequences. If you breaking rules.
Give us consequences.
Are we talking about commissioners or people showing
Yeah,
up?
let's say a commissioner does something, and, I mean, is there like sanctioning? What does
You
that
could do,
mean?
I mean, sanctioning is, okay, Commissioner X broke the rules, you know, we want it on the record to show that Commissioner X has continually broken the rules and that we think that's inappropriate. Can you,
Can't stop them
what
from
more can
serving.
you do from that?
Can't
You
stop
could,
them from serving.
no, the only two things you could do is ethics violation, which I personally would recommend that I don't like a sitting board to do that.
Right.
Or contact the governor and say Commissioner X is out of control and needs to be removed.
Hopefully,
I
God,
mean-
we don't get to that.
What about censoring?
Removing someone from a meeting.
Oh, you're talking about residents? Yeah, no, you absolutely
No,
can
no,
do
we're talking about
that.
commissioners.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm at commission.
Who are you talking about?
I don't know more than
I was
what.
talking about people.
See, the problem is that you're an elected official who's a representative form of government, so it'd be hard for you to censor somebody other than to take a vote and say, we censor you.
Can we vote to, remove somebody from the chamber and sanction them from ever coming back to the chamber?
First answer is yes, the second one's no.
Yeah, you have
So
the power to vote.
you could trespass me from the city,
Yeah,
but you can't trespass me from a public meeting.
right.
Unless I can be removed.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
unruly, I'm cursing, I'm, doing that, and then we can easily have, whoever the chief or whoever's
What if
there.
there's a restraining, what if you have a restraining order on somebody?
Even see, public meetings, there's a exception for public meetings, almost to everything.
Okay.
But in the meeting, it's the mayor is the one who can have someone.
Yes, you could
direct the
say,
chief.
I mean, normally, Mayor, you would say, please, you're being disruptive.
Yeah.
Okay, person does it again, this is my last warning, does it again, chief, please remove that person.
All right.
And I've seen that done. And I've seen it also where we have people that are known to come in and curse, and, you've been warned,
Yeah.
Mr. X, you've been warned not to do it. As soon as they curse, chief, you could say, you're done, and if the person doesn't leave, then you'd say, chief.
Anything else?
I had one more thing, and I don't want
He's
you,
got one more thing. I'm just busting your balls, Mike.
they're big, so feel free.
12 minutes, sir.
This is here larger.
Can I block anybody? No, I'm just kidding. No, this is not about our decision that we made with you being vice mayor after me.
Oh.
But my question is, should we not have the mayor choose in the future after the vice mayor who they feel, unless there is a vote that opposes it?
At 11:20, Mike, are bringing this up?
All right, let me make.
This is what you don't have to do
Here's what
right
I'd
now.
rather- No, here's what I'd rather do. First of all, I hated this thing being a personality contest.
Yep.
I recommended Commissioner Eisner. because
Vice mayor. but
Vice-
who's
Vice
counting?
Mayor, I'm sorry, I keep saying.
Word at the
Because-
top.
Well, no, because you were commissioner then. I recommended Commissioner Eisner because he was next up. I just think that if there should be a rule, not that the mayor picks, it should be the next guy up.
You
It's
could do
just
that. You
Every
could do it
year,
any
the
way you
next guy up,
want.
which would be Commissioner Kulyas next year, automatic.
So you could go senior
I'd have
to
that.
senior,
I'd rather
it
have
goes
that.
in a
That's how it should be.
rotation. The
That's how it
problem
should
is,
It shouldn't be
the
a
only
popularity
problem
contest.
is if that person isn't there, right? So you could do it either by senior or by seat.
Well, I'm going to respectfully ask that it not be done by senior unless we define senior.
Well, we would have to define,
What
yes.
defines senior, but-
And we would have to put in a provision if there's a
We
problem,
can
if
bring
that
that-
person's
we can-
removed.
For no other reason other than.
I don't
No,
want the
no,
job.
you
Let me
can,
be
but
clear.
the
Those of
next
us
guy
that are
up, the next guy up can decline.
Versus those that are.
Well, you
just
can, as the
kinda
mayor said, you
senior.
could decline
So,
it.
I mean,
Yeah, the next
I-
guy
I'd
could
like a
decline
different
and then go to the
word is
next
what
Yeah,
I'm really saying.
we could figure that out.
That's the way it should be.
I
It
would
should
ask
be-
you that we don't put that on these initial rules.
Okay.
Because we're gonna have to spend a little time on that.
Yeah, we can have a conversation
That's
about
fine,
that.
done by March though, next March. But you're already set for March.
He's
so-
already
Right,
said
we
it,
have
but I
the
just
next-
think it's just like automatic.
You would get it
We're not
anyway.
getting a popularity.
Right, you would get it either way.
Guys, the reason why we came up with that, and that was because I didn't come up with that thought process before. You did, Mayor, and I wanted to make sure, as we did this even split, and, that I felt like I was one of those people that should have been appointed vice mayor, whether it be the first year or the second year, especially if, Commissioner DiDonato and Commissioner Banther aren't gonna be on the board.
But remember, that meeting, how many times I looked at the mayor and I said, Mayor, what do you want? I'll go with whatever you want.
Right.
The mayor wouldn't make a call. He kept he sat there stoic.
Costa?
I said, Mayor, make a call. I'll make the motion, you make the call. Whatever you want. And he wouldn't make the call. Says, oh, okay, let's just split the baby up in threes. It was just an ad hoc idea. Hey, I got a lot of ad hoc ideas.
the
Hey,
next-
let's wear golf shirts.
Yeah.
That's another ad
Yeah,
hoc
second
idea.
that.
I make a lot of ad hoc ideas.
Notice I brought it up, but nobody wanted to speak about it, right?
Did that golf shirt go towards staff too?
I still want the green jacket with pink polka dots.
There you
Wasn't it with pink? No, I'm just kidding.
All right, well, this meeting is adjourned 11:21.
I appreciate that.
Wait a minute, I had one more thing.